Are you able to hear me?
Short loop. Now it just said that. Well, did you cancel everything that was going to take?
As soon as that hits 6 o'clock, we'll start. How about that? Last time we were 20 minutes late.
They're so efficient now. No, they've been working on it half hours.
Okay. We want to welcome everyone to South Weber City Council. Today is Tuesday, May the 24th, 2020. We welcome all of you here, and we'll begin with a pledge of allegiance by Councilwoman Petty and a prayer by Councilwoman Alberts.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father in heaven, we are very grateful to be able to be gathered today as elected officials and citizens and staff to talk about the many important things that are going on in our cities and things we need to consider. We are grateful for this opportunity we have to live in this free land where we are able to organize ourselves in government and be able to represent our citizens. We pray, Father, for a special blessing to be upon those in the city that are in need of special care, and also to please watch over our emergency personnel and keep them safe and help them know how much we greatly value and appreciate them. We are grateful for all of these things and pray that as we discuss many items this night, that we will be able to do so in thy listen and in thy good care. And we say these things in the just care.
Okay, we're going to jump right into public comments. If you've got a comment, we'd ask you to step up to the microphone and take 3 or less minutes to address the council, and the council will not respond to your questions.
Paul Stern, 2527 Deer Run Drive. My comments tonight are on agenda item 11, ordinance 2204, development agreement for South Weber Gateway. I referenced the packet and it's paragraph 2EI. The developer agrees to the following terms, conditions apply to the development of the property. Developer agrees to develop the property in phases as described below, depicted in the phasing plan attached as Exhibit E. Phase 1 shall include a minimum of 3 retail pads with no more than 30 townhome units. This agreement clearly states there will be no more than 30 townhome units in Phase 1. The number is in accordance with South Weber City Code, wherein a maximum of 30 units are permitted with only one exit. Please note, I have mentioned this fact many times in different public comments, both City Council and Planning Commission. The next is the actual drawing from Exhibit E. Please count the number of units shown in the Phase 1 figure of Exhibit E. It clearly shows 31 units, not the 30 as agreed upon in the jointly developed Gateway Development Agreement. With all the past challenges with this developer reneging on prior presentation / verbal guarantees, as referenced with Blair Halverson's and Haley Albert's statements and comments during the City Council meeting of 28 April 22, they should be held to the letter of the law, that is, no more than 30 units in Phase 1. It appears that, once again, this developer is trying to hoodwink South Weber City by supplying a development agreement reference document that is contrary to the agreement itself. City code is city code. 30 is not 31, as shown in Exhibit E. Bottom line, the text and the graphic do not match. So who has priority at that point? Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Any other comments?
The right public hearing, or I should go to item number 7 if I want to talk about the wages?
No, we'll do that on public hearing. Okay, then we'll move to our presentation. We're going to do a little flip on presentations. We're going to have Jenny Taylor stand up and speak to us on the 9/11 project. Appreciate her being here today, and I know she's very busy, and so we'll take her this time. Jenny, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It's great to be here. My name is Jenny Taylor. I am a resident of North Ogden City, but we come here often for basketball because you guys have your great school and rec center that are nearby, and my boys are, oh, thank you. My boys are big basketball fans, and I will say I wish we had a rec center like yours. So if North Ogden's listening, please tune in. I am here tonight to share a little bit about a project that we have coming up for all of Davis County this fall. September 11th, of course, comes by every single year, and last year marked the 20th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of 9/11. So while I'm speaking, what I want you to think about is where were you that Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001. This is kind of the long scope of this, and this presentation is shared, and it's kind of part of the packet if anybody wants the details, but I'm going to show you some visuals. What we're proposing is a public event that's free, open to the public, open to residents inside and outside of Davis County, but we know Davis is a great location to draw people. We'll be in Farmington at the Legacy Event Center. If you look at the map on the screen, you'll notice there's the building, there's the different parking lots, and then of course there's different access for different things. I'll show you inside what will be where. Inside the Legacy Event Center, we will be setting up a museum, and we call it immersive and interactive. So what we will do is take photo boards that are 4 feet by 8 feet tall, printed on foam board, and there's over 300 of them. And you will start walking through them kind of in a labyrinth where it's a timeline. There's also 20 televisions and 30 areas of directional sound. So you will go through, you can kind of see the walking map there. We started the 1990s because we want to take you right back to where you were before everything happened. We'll walk through Utah. We'll walk through an area that highlights each of the cities here in Davis County, and I'll get to that in a second. We're hoping you'll help participate. We'll walk you through some pop culture from the 90s again to kind of set that mode and get to where we were. Remember, before 2001, our biggest worry was the year 2000. We were worried the computers would stop. We weren't in any major wars. Terrorism was this foreign thing. A lot of what happens today in our world hadn't yet happened. And so we take the viewer through this kind of interactive, fun, lighthearted everything, and then we walk you into New York City on the morning of September 11th. We take you through Pennsylvania and the Pentagon. We do it in a tasteful way, but it is intended to be very emotionally provoking. We want people who are old enough to remember it, to really remember it. And we want people like my kids who didn't live through it to really experience it, not in a way that leaves them feeling terrible and awful because of what happened, but in a way that leaves them inspired to react the way America did on September 12th. And you'll notice as we go through these different areas, the last area is a call to action. And the call to action is, what can we do as members of Davis County, of residents of Utah? How do we come together to help make our community stronger and more united? Let's see, that's a video clip that I'm not able to make play. I don't know if Lisa, you're able to, or it's okay if not, it's just kind of a little teaser to get not working. Okay, look at the photo. You'll see the photo boards kind of walking through. The schedule will be the week leading up to September 11th. We'll be setting up on Labor Day and the next day, Tuesday. It will be open to the public Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of that week. The whole timeline, there's a lot of ways for people to volunteer. So if anyone in this room or anyone listening or in your city wants to get involved, our next volunteer meeting will be held in Layton on June 1st at 11 a.m. And there's all kinds of opportunities to be engaged. We've got a number of sponsors from around the community, local businesses pitching in. And one of the other things that we'll also do is, you come out of that interactive museum experience, we set up a community resource fair where we invite service-oriented organizations to come showcase what they do. So these organizations will either be serving organizations that provide a service or organizations that provide an opportunity to serve. So we'll have military, medical, fire, police professionals. We'll have the Boys and Girls Club, the local food kitchens. We'll have all kinds of places where you can come learn what resources there are in your community. And then we'll also have places where you can talk to them and say, hey, sign me up, put me to work. I want to be able to give back. And there's a lot of different ways in Davis County that people can give back. And some people just need a little help knowing what those ways are. The third piece, so we've got the interactive museum, we've got the resource fair. The third piece outside is the parking lot, the fire truck, the ambulance, a few military vehicles. So it'll be a lot of fun. It will be really engaging. We'll open it to school children during the day, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for field trips. Again, free and open to the public. What we'd like to ask of your city and each of the cities in the county is to help us gather a few photos that you feel best represent your city. So when people walk through the very beginning of this photo exhibit, before they get to 9/11 and the 90s and everything else, they'll see each city. So if you have one large photo or a collage of photos, just something that you feel like when you look at that, that says this is South Weber City. and then maybe a sentence or two about your history, your heritage. We want people to really feel the local feel of this before they go into the statewide and then into the national visuals. So that's one thing we've got there. Again, if anybody wants to volunteer and get involved, if you know of any businesses or organizations that might want to participate as partners or sponsors, the easiest way to reach us is info@majorbrenttaylor.com. And that comes straight to me. And if anybody has any questions, council or staff, other than that, that's all I've got. Just a big invitation to put it on your calendar and hopefully come participate with us and help America remember what it felt like on September 12th that year, because I think we've lost a lot of that. And we promised 21 years ago that we would never forget. So we're doing our part to make sure in our community that the rest of the nation might be off their rocker, but not here in Utah, certainly not northern Utah and not in Davis County. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I did go to the Weaver County one.
Oh,
and
you
it was amazing. So
Oh,
I
good.
would highly recommend it for anybody. It was really neat. And going and seeing the 90s, like I wasn't anticipating that part. And so it was incredible.
It's kind of fun, huh? You get a little Steve Urkel and Tickle
Yeah.
Elmo and the original Friends the first time around. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that you shared that. There's a testimonial. You don't have
There you
to
go.
take it from me. Anything else?
Okay,
We just-
Jenny,
A deadline for us to submit things to you for our city?
We'll email that. We'd like to get them by July if we can, so we can get everything printed. And I can share with you some photos of how some of the cities did it last year. You know, for example, I'm from North Ogden. North Ogden took 2 boards to put one gigantic Mount Ben Lomond, because that is just us. Some of the other cities did 8 or 9 photos that we put together, still, 2 or 3 feet each. They weren't small, but they chose to do a collection. So that'll be kind of depending on what your feel is. I think the best bet would be if you can let me know, are you the best contact? Who's the best contact? So
I
I'm
think
not emailing everyone.
Yeah,
I'll-
work through me.
Okay, so we'll do that, and sooner rather than later is kind of the deadline, but we'll obviously take it when we can get it. We know everyone's busy and you've got top priorities in your city, but love to have anyone that wants to participate or get involved and hopefully come, mostly just come. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Jenny, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sounds like a great event. Okay, we'll move right along. DSO is here with their quarterly report, so we'll turn the time to Sergeant Pope.
Hello. I swear it feels like yesterday I was here and then I looked at it and it was 4 months. So things are going by crazy this year, crazy fast. While we're getting that squared away, I have been watching, when I'm in South Weaver, I've been watching the red zone parking on 2700 East. I know that's been a kind of a big issue lately. One question I did have for you guys when I read the email and everything that was coming out on it, what is your expectation? Of course, you don't want them to park across sidewalks, things like that, but is there any allowed parking in that area right now that you guys want?
I think that's why it's painted red.
Okay. Okay. I like that answer.
I
like that answer.
Red means red.
That,
Okay. And then there's no gray area.
okay.
That's too hard if you, as a judgment call.
Perfect. Okay. That's kind of where I was sitting at is that what the city wants? So now that I know, I'll make sure I extend that to the rest of the deputies. So,
Thank you.
all right. So this presentation is from February 8th to May 23rd. I'm Sergeant Pope. I've been in EMS for 21 years and I've been a law enforcement officer for 15 here at the Sheriff's Office. We also have with us today, I didn't know that Detective Sergeant Pierce is going to be here as well, but he is here. We have Elizabeth Pinto, which is our criminal analyst. And we also have Danielle Rodriguez, who just joined us as the Victim Services Coordinator. So they'll kind of give you a little bit of rundown on some of the things that information that they have and things that they can do. As far as staffing, if you can click on that. As far as the stats go. Okay, so these are the weekly hours that we had from South Weaver or from our deputies that they record each shift as they go through. These are the hours. If you want to scroll down a little bit, I wish I could do that on my own here. But we had a total of 972 hours. If you keep going, we have a weekly average of 84 hours a week. Some of those have a little bit higher, some a little bit lower. As I said last time, in law enforcement right now, there's not a whole lot of people who really want to do that. So we are actively recruiting. We have 8 recruits that are going through training right now. So we are actually bolstering our staffing a lot, and we expect those numbers to just kind of rise as we get more staffing and more people coming on. With the paramedic program going in January, we kind of had people who had to decide, do I want to be a paramedic or do I want to be a law enforcement officer? So we lost a few people from wanting to be a paramedic only, and now we're getting law enforcement officers. So
How many openings do you have right now?
right now, I think we only have about 3 or 4 more in patrol. We are actually we're getting back up to where we need to be. So with our trainees, they should be out by the end of the year. We should have quite a bit of staffing, and those hours should be increasing. So work performance, we had 909 calls in this time period. There were 9 arrests, and of that, 226 were traffic stops, 90 were radar enforcement. I tried to look it up again. They keep changing our system. What they're doing is they're trying to consolidate our dispatch centers. That's a project that is coming up in the county. They want to consolidate Layton and Clearfield and Bountiful all with Davis County. And so right now they keep adding things onto the servers and removing them, and they're trying to get that all ready. So it's all a jumble. The citation amount that I saw was 52, but I don't know if that's completely 100% accurate. But I was pleased to see that, because that seems a lot higher than our previous ones, because we've been talking to our deputies about, hey, we kind of need to, if there's violations, you need to make sure you're covering that. So 90 radar enforcements, that actually does include school zones and things like that. So where our deputies are out here doing radar. And then 53.9% of the calls were self-initiated. So that means the deputy actually went out and started the call rather than being called to go to it. So
So normally, don't you have citations on that?
yeah, normally I do, but like I was talking to you about,
The servers.
yeah, I don't think it's
Okay.
anywhere near accurate, and I didn't want to put something down that wasn't accurate at this point. So I didn't want to present an actual number, whereas it could be something completely different. So I apologize about that.
Not your fault.
All right, if we can go back to the slideshow there. And I talked to David Larson, and we agreed we would put kind of really significant things on there, so we're not going through everything that happened in South Weaver in the last 4 months, right? So it'll be a little shorter. You won't have to sit here and look at me for too long. On April 27th at 5 in the morning, we had an evading. The person had actually already evaded from Highway Patrol, and a deputy was conducting extra patrol on Highway 89 looking for that person. They actually swerved towards him, tried to hit him while he was sitting on the side of the highway. So the pursuit he actually pursued the vehicle, went into Weaver County, was discontinued without apprehending the suspects at the time because it just got too dangerous. Later, Weaver County was able to locate and pursue the vehicle. The vehicle crashed and 2 passengers were detained. The driver was still outstanding at this point on April 27th. I'm not sure if they've been caught since then. So it came through South Weaver. And they actually did get off on South Weaver Drive and then flip around on South Weaver Drive about 2100 East, came back, and then went on 89 again. And this is the only other one. So at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there was another evade for a stolen vehicle. This actually happened just, yesterday. So an outside agency transferred an active OnStar vehicle tracking piece. So basically someone said my car was stolen and I have OnStar tracking it right now. Vehicle was gray GMC Canyon, was listed on the National Crime Information Center out of Carbon County. They located the vehicle, and it was actually located, we didn't put the address down here, but it was actually located on 8100 South and 2700 East, right there in that area. So he had actually gone off into South Weaver and gone into the city. They found him, and he actively fled. They tried to initiate a stop. The pursuit was initiated and concluded due to the lack of exigency. So if it's a stolen vehicle and it's property, we have said, once it gets to a certain point, we're not going to chase because property isn't worth other people's lives risking theirs. So the vehicle was found abandoned at a Maverick in Clearfield, and our deputies got out with canines along with a bunch of other officers. They found the suspects running from the scene, and they found two of the three suspects. So they're still looking for the last one. They have identified him, I believe. I'm not quite positive on that, but I think they've identified him. They're just looking for him. So that is it for me. Our captain changed over to Jason Boydston now. Before it was Captain Taylor West. Now it's Jason Boydston, who used to be the lieutenant in patrol. So if you have any questions, you can contact him as well. Is there any questions that you guys have or any requests? I know that construction is a big point right now. On my crew, I'm working day shift. I'm on patrol again, and I usually have 2 to 3 deputies up here and hitting all different points of the city. I don't know if you've noticed more of us around, but we've tried.
I have.
Okay. We've tried to show ourselves a little bit more.
Still haven't seen them on 2100 East. Still haven't seen them on 1900 East.
I drove up there a couple days ago, but I wasn't able to stop. I actually had to leave. So I was going to sit where I usually sit.
It's getting even faster.
Okay.
And again,
Is it both ways or mainly coming
oh no,
south
it's
or north?
Yeah, no, they're coming north.
North.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's residents over there racing.
Okay.
The most I'm seeing and I'm concerned about is, of course, the mornings while we still have kids, and especially
Yes.
with the switch over to summer. I mean, most of these people that are hauling down there, I mean, you know the routine. So I know that's got to be through the rest of the city as well.
Okay.
So
So you think 7:30, 8 in the morning is usually when that's kind of going through, or maybe
oh
a
yeah,
little earlier?
that's when you can catch a good chunk of them.
Okay.
Afternoons and evenings, I'm seeing even more. And
Really?
it's just
Okay.
getting, you know, it's people going fast, and they're going fast everywhere. But yeah, in the neighborhoods, I personally, and everyone's going to have a different decision, but I personally would rather see patrols up in the neighborhoods than ever on South Weaver Drive. It just, I mean, I know that we've got problems on South Weaver Drive, and especially as we go further west, but seeing them up at the front of the city right over there, well, I know it does serve a purpose. I'm more worried about the kids in the neighborhoods than I ever am about from someone going 45 to 55 instead right there at that entrance.
Okay.
So,
I will put that out to our deputies.
and again, the lowest tolerance that can be done. I think we need to start getting points on people's license, or they're not going to slow down.
Okay.
So
I agree. Okay. Anywhere else that we can
Thank you.
pinpoint?
Sorry, Mayor, I just have one on that note.
Absolutely.
On South Weaver Drive,
Uh-huh.
about 10 p.m. till about 1 a.m.
Okay.
is our typical racers that come. I can
okay.
hear them. They're
Okay.
back. So
Oh, great.
just a heads up for
Okay.
that. Yeah, bullet bikes or sports cars, you can just hear them. You can hear them racing. So.
Okay. Obviously, you're almost right in front of the city office here, huh?
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's Dave. Right.
Anyone else have anything?
Thank you, Sergeant Pope.
Okay.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
No problem. And I think they wanted to come up and present a
Okay.
few stats to you too.
Okay.
Good evening. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Elizabeth Pinto. I'm the investigative criminal analyst in the investigations division. I don't have a PowerPoint, but I do have some notes for you. I brought you each. Do all of you have a packet for me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So I, as Sergeant was saying, I'm going to be explaining a little bit of what I do. So I do a lot of administrative statistics. It's this fun, boring stuff with Excel, all that jazz. And then I also help out with cases, doing tactical analysis and stuff like that as well. So I'll help with putting together workups, acknowledging criminal history, vehicles, jobs, everything within a particular home, as well as reviewing warrant returns and stuff like that. And today as well with us, we have Ms. Danielle Rodriguez, and she is our new Victims Advocate Coordinator. We are so excited to have her aboard, and she will also be having another Victims Advocate join her soon. So today I've brought with me some analytics from all of 2022 thus far, in addition to a quarterly, of course. So looking over, first things first, we have our 2022 analytics, and we've seen a countywide increase in person crimes, as you can see, and these are just South Weaver. These are all of the analytics that I'm going to be sharing with you today are cases that were investigated by the investigations in Davis County. And for all of 2022 so far, we have nearly a 70% of all crimes investigated are person crimes. And if you were to include death investigations and crime against society, that is well over 75% of the cases that are investigated. Whereas property crimes only make up for about 18%. Looking in the next page, we break it down a little bit further. So here we're looking at percentages of crime by offense, not just type. So still those colors are applicable. So all of the red is person crimes. And as you can see for 2022, our most seen crimes that we are investigating is child abuse, child neglect, sexual assault of a child, child endangerment, fraud, and vehicle theft. And then on the next page, we just have listed crime type and how many cases of that crime type that we have investigated so far this year. Our quarterly review is laid out the exact same way. So if you'll follow me to the quarterly analytics, again, we have 65% of person crimes, and yet still, if we include the death investigations and crimes against society, that makes up well over 75%, and property crimes is making up about 19%. And again, delving a little bit deeper, it just breaks it down a little bit more by offense. And here we're seeing child abuse, sexual assault of a child, child endangerment, fraud, vehicle theft, and sextortion as being the most crimes that we are investigating. That's all I have for you all today. Is there any questions that you have for me at this time?
No, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I mean, I wish you had better stats. Next time, come with better stats, okay?
You know what? I will do my best.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
So real quick, Danielle, she doesn't have anything really to talk about, but one thing I do want to say real quick for her is the reason we're so excited about her position right now is when people actually get injured, assaulted, anything that happens to their person, they're a victim. It takes until the court case is adjudicated or a court is initiated, something like that, before they actually get a victim advocate assigned to them. So that could be, especially with COVID, that could be months before they even get any type of victim assistance. And so the fact that we've hired her and we have another one coming is amazing because they can start that victim assistance now. If it's something very serious, they can come out that day and they can start those services for these victims. So that's kind of why we're so excited that she's here. We asked her to come as well, is because of that. So she'll downplay it because she's just humble like that, but we are super excited because that is a huge thing.
Is this the first VA for DCSO?
Yes, this is the first time we've ever had them, and we are so excited. So especially when you say person's crimes are 65, 75% of it, well, we need a victim advocate to help out those victims. So it's awesome.
That's good.
Very
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you.
That it?
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
We appreciate
Thank
all
you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I did fail to mention one thing. Councilman Soderquist is with us tonight. He's on Zoom. So Quinn, if you have any questions, raise your hand or speak up or whatever. I apologize for not acknowledging you being on
It's okay.
Zoom.
Are you able to hear me okay?
We can see you, but we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
We can't hear you.
Mm-mm.
Cannot.
Okay, next item, is our action item, our consent agenda for April 28th minutes. We'd like to entertain a motion on the consent agenda or any questions on the minutes.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Have a second, all in favor, then say aye.
Aye.
Do we need Quinn's vote? Do we need it like verbally or something?
Just
Can you
give us
hear
a
me at
thumbs
all?
up, Quinn.
Can you hear me at all?
They're working on it,
He
Quinn.
he says he's
All right.
good.
Oh, was that you?
Can we hear you now?
Can you hear me? I'm trying
There
to
we
talk.
go. You're good.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is a public hearing on fiscal year 2022-23 tentative budget. Uh, Staff, you have anything you want to say before we entertain a motion to open the public hearing?
Nope.
On that? Okay, then we'll ask for a motion to open the public hearing.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on fiscal year 2022-23 tentative budget.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Do we need a roll call on this?
No.
No. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're open for public hearing, so anyone that would like to.
Michael Grant, 2622 Deer Run Drive. Generally, I don't write, but today I have, since it's a sensitive topic and I don't want to make mistakes. As discussed during previous city council meeting, I think it is not a good idea to increase any of the wages or salaries for city council members, planning commission members, or the mayor. This is in no way to suggest that their role in the city is not appreciated. The first thing I asked in 2019 when I got interested in the city was how much the members were paid. My jaw dropped when I was told the amounts, a pittance, such small amount, and they were putting so much work into the city. This is something I could never do. So hats off to all volunteer positions in the city. I know it takes away time and energy from other possibly more productive things in your life, yet you choose to be here in the city. Very commendable. The meager wages offered to all the volunteer positions are not even close to what various office bearers do for the city. All these meager wages are not enough to keep your lives going, not even 10% of your daily or monthly needs. So increasing the wages by a couple of $1,000s here or a few $100s there is not going to change your personal daily economics or operations. Halfway done. A teacher or a police officer who's out there in the field working for the community, which has lifelong implications for the public, gets paid, I don't know, $40,000 or $50,000 a year. Do you think that's their worth? They should be paid a lot more, even especially if it comes down to their lives. I think we should not go on a tangent where we start assessing what job position is worth how much. In this day and age, when people are struggling to make their ends meet, inflation is now in double digits. A storm sewer rate increase by $7 is creating ripples. I think it is a bad idea to increase any volunteer position wages by a dime, let alone a few $100s. During last election, it was not as if we were looking for volunteers for these positions. We had 3 contestants for mayor's position alone, even more for council member positions. Realized that various contestants were not applying for the wages they were putting in because they wanted to serve. I almost feel like saying that there should be no wages or stipends paid at all for any volunteer position. I make this statement to drive home a point, that is, for a volunteer position to keep in line with public sentiment of rising expenses, and in no way to dishonor or disrespect for what you do for the various office positions. So at this time, there should be no increase in salaries for council member position, planning members, planning commission members, or mayor's position. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else?
Mayor, I make a motion that we close the public hearing on fiscal year 2022-2023 tentative budget.
I'll second that.
Have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, next item is ordinance 2022-6, amendment Title 10, or Title 10, Chapter 3, Section 4, Planning Commission Organization. Is there any discussion on this? We discussed this about making, I think everyone read that. Is there anything to discuss, or do we want to
I
make a
think I
motion?
have some notes on it, but I just lost my
Okay.
internet. Sorry. Just give me 1 second.
Mayor, while she's still looking that up, I'll just say, I still don't see the need for it. It, to me, like I said before, I believe Jeremy's doing a really good job. He's kind of been thrown into a fire and he's been able to handle it just fine. And I think it still gives the opportunity for more people to be able to be the chairman instead of one person. But that's just my opinion on it.
I did find it. I was just wondering about the part that mentions it's their bylaws. Did those get adopted for 2022 yet?
They don't need to be re-adopted every year.
They don't need to.
No,
So
the bylaws were adopted, and if there ever are amendments, then those would.
did they
be
get adopted?
but
I guess is not necessarily 2022 yet, but they did get adopted.
They were adopted,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, that was just my question that I had.
Other comments?
I would just say, just to Councilman Dills, I just feel like it just gives us the option, not necessarily requires someone to have it more than 1 year in a row, but it gives the option out there. So if the planning commission, I mean, anyone could nominate themselves or someone else. So I think it's nice to have the option to allow someone to serve 2 years consecutively.
Yeah, I concur with Councilwoman Petty. I just think it offers that. It gives them, it offers a little more continuity, a little more professionalism. They have a little more experience at it. I think the meetings run a little bit smoother. If they're given that and it's still an opportunity, the Planning Commission still has the opportunity to chair whoever they desire, whether it be 1 year. Just gives them the option of having 2 years. So.
Just a point of clarification, the way this code is written, so it has no more than 2 consecutive years. So do we need to put in there, well, I guess they're only for 3 terms, but, or 3 years, but if they take a year off, they can try and go for chair again. Is that just assumed, or do we need to actually add that writing in there?
No, that's because it says consecutive, that just clarifies that you can't have,
Okay,
so you could do one off year and then
Okay.
again if you.
just want to make sure on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll ask for a motion on this.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 2022-06, amend Title 10, Chapter 3, Section 4, Planning Commission Organization.
I'll second them.
We have a second. We'll take a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, 4-1. So the ordinance passes. Our next ordinance, number 2022-8, amend Title 10, Chapter 18, short-term or vacation rentals. Any discussion on this ordinance?
I've got a couple of things that that as I look through it, I would like to either talk about adding into it or maybe understanding how the entire process is going to be, because as I look through this, it doesn't have a couple of the things that I would like. Number one being a very strong way to allow code enforcement to shut down and penalize the abusive ones. We've just spent a lot of city time and money fighting one. And right now, with the way we have it listed in there, there's a warning. They get a couple of weeks, I think, to address it, which if it's something like, they've got more people parking out onto the road and parking out on the lawn. Well, the next night that, the short-term renters switch, it doesn't matter if we give them a notice saying they've got a month to be able to do it. They're going to have it taken care of at that time. As I've looked through other cities, they have when you apply for it, one person has to be designated as the contact manager for it, which basically just says they're within 30 minutes of it. And if one of the neighbors needs to call the manager first
So we
and say, hey, there's a big party going on.
do have that.
I didn't see it in there.
Well, the planning commission has a list they go through, and that contact person and a point of contact has to be here locally.
Uh-huh.
And it is in that, it's part of the planning commission's process of doing
The CUP.
the CUP.
Okay. Does that also then have in there a 3 strikes policy?
Yes,
It's not up to them, it's actual.
that is actually in our code.
Okay,
The 3 strike policy is an automatic,
okay.
you're done.
They lose their cup or they lose their business license?
They lose the bit both, it's revoked.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Then see it as both, so.
That was the whole process of when we initially set the STR code up,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
was to come up with a policy so code enforcement could do something and to put all that into place. And maybe Jamie would have a better.
Yeah, and I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
The one other layer to understand is there's a due process right that the holder of the CUP and the holder of the business license has. It may be the same individual, but you would have to go through that due process and then you could revoke.
Okay.
One thing that Joel said that may need clarification, in the short-term rental ordinance right now, 1018.3B2 is where it talks about the designated local responsible party. It does not have a specific area.
Yeah, you're right. It
It
doesn't have
says
like
that you
a,
have to
Yeah.
designate one as part of the CUP, but it does not have that element to it.
Mhm.
So if that's a point to discuss, then.
Yeah.
So looking at number 2, how would you want it to be worded, Joel?
Joel, do you want some clarity on the enforcement process?
If you would.
And what the city's rights are?
Yeah,
So I don't think there would be enforcement procedures unique to this type of ordinance, but the general administrative code enforcement ordinance that the council recently adopted would apply here. And so you have 2 varieties of, well, you have more than 2 that could occur, but the 2 main ones that you'll encounter are code violations by individuals and then code violations by the actual property. And if the violation involves the property, then you can apply the full force of your administrative code enforcement program to stop these kinds of activities. The only kinds of things that you could step in and abate immediately without providing notice and an opportunity to cure would be nuisance category violations. So things that affect kind of the health and well-being or the enjoyment of neighboring property. So if you had a loud party or noise or those kind of things, you could abate that as a nuisance and handle it in that way in addition to whatever criminal things may apply. If it were, leasing it to too many people or doing those kinds of things, then you would have to walk through the process of giving them an opportunity to cure, stop that behavior, and then you could step in and enforce it through fine or penalty at the end of that process.
So just a clarification, if it's a nuisance issue, does that go against one of their strikes, or is that because of the people on the property are being a nuisance?
No, I think that would cut it both. So
Okay.
what I typically would recommend if David were to call me and have that kind of a thing happening would be address it as a nuisance violation and address it as a general code violation in the same notice.
Okay,
But the big difference, the nuisance gives you the tools to stop it right then and there. Right?
okay, thank you.
and maybe from the committee's point of view, and others can correct me if I'm misstating this, but so that I think maybe to answer some of Quinn's questions had, and maybe what you had, and I know what Planning Commission had on this, is I personally looked at it as, people move into a neighborhood not wanting it to be a motel.
Yeah.
It's a residential neighborhood. So people have asked about the 12 months. Why did we select the 12 months? Well, then they're there to live there, and they're going to take care of their home, and they're just renting it out short term, and they're going to take care of it because they're going to see the neighbors. The 12 months isn't meant to be 12 months to the day. There's some different people, they start talking about, well, is that occupancy or is that title closing or what is that? If it's a few days, it's kind of is it the letter of the law or the intent? And it's more of the intent. Well, that person's living here as a resident if they've been here for that long. And that was what the committee kind of came up with as far as the 12 months came from. The others were, how do you tell whether it is a sexual predator or whatever, well, they can't.
Yeah.
So that's why we came up with what do other states do? What do other areas do? That's where we came up with the 2,000 feet. And that was just that's what else do you come up with it? That distance can be argued, and we're all open for suggestions. That's what we came up with in the committee, because that's what another state did. Or maybe it was another city in another state, but we didn't have a lot of examples here. And then as far as capping it, we looked at other cities and what they were doing percentage wise. And that way you don't become just an area that's for businesses.
Yeah.
So, because you don't live in a business area. So,
and I
anyway.
noticed that as I was going through a lot of the other cities, they've actually done the opposite. They've said straight out, there will be no short-term rentals in residential,
Yep.
you know, so I know we've kind of left that open to it, and I'm not sure if that's the right course.
And we debated, very originally, we debated that when we created the code originally. Do we just not allow it, period?
Yeah.
And that is an option. That is, because I struggle with it. I mean, do I want that as my neighbor, or do I want to allow that in my home?
Yeah.
And I personally don't, so.
Yeah, and I guess that's still my concern, is that, you know, where we're opening up a commercial outlet right there in the middle of a neighborhood, and all of the effects that can happen to it. I've kind of learned from past experience that you can start with the hardest form of any type of law or rule and management, and then as you want, you can kind of soften it later on to, you know, allow for different things. Where the opposite, if you start, say, almost like with the 25 that we have in there, if you start up at 25, it's going to be very difficult for us or any other city council to bring it down to 20 or 15.
Isn't 25 at build out?
That's a
max.
build out.
Yeah.
You start with a percentage, but anyway, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, because I would rather almost look at what we've got. So if we have 11 of them out there, fine, we go with 12 or 13. And that way we know if more want to come in, we can either make the decision to do it, or we can hold to that number right then and there. And it's more of allowing it as it goes, because then we have code behind us to be able to say, you know, we can stop it at the 10.
Which is basically where we're at now. We took the number that we have and determined that as we grow, we really don't want any more than that in proportionate to the growth. So as we get more households in, that number allowed could increase, but at build out would be no more than 25.
Well, but the way the code is written, it's by percentage, which means we don't decide that. Means that as more people come into the city, it automatically opens up more short-term rental opportunities. Where
Right.
I'm saying, if you start the cap down at a lower number, then yes, when the percentage goes up, then it comes onto council to be able to say, yes, we want to go on and raise the cap as well. So does that make sense, what I'm saying on that?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
okay.
see what you're saying.
So
I'm trying to think logistically how that would work, because let's say right now, just throwing numbers out, let's say right now we have 10 and the cap is 10, and then someone applies after, you know, a few hundred homes have come in, then we have to come in and adjust our code again, instead of allowing this code to stand in place and allowing that to naturally grow. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I just don't think that the people's appetite right now is to just allow it to keep growing.
Right now, we don't have a cap.
Yeah.
We
But
don't.
we don't have people that want it either, except for the people that
Oh,
are
yeah,
running
we
it.
do. We have people who let the applications in.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The people who want to run it, they're the ones that want to have it. None of the people that live in the neighborhoods want them. So I'm looking more at, you know, the citizens, they don't want it, and yet we're going to build an automatic process into it. So
Well,
just a thought. I mean,
right now, what's our, didn't we say 25, 60?
According to the census numbers I pulled, we have 2,100
So we're
units.
probably almost maxed out already,
yeah.
if that's 5% of that number.
0.5%.
It's 0.5%, so
Or
it'd be
0.5%,
10,
that's what I meant.
10 would be allowed right now, and we're at 5 that have approved applications.
And I don't disagree with you, Joel. I mean, the choice is do you want to allow it at all? I mean, if you want to cap it where it's at now or whatever, but I mean, the decision was made before that we were going to allow it, but we didn't have a cap and we saw that we needed a cap of some kind.
Yeah.
So that you didn't have a whole bunch everywhere.
Well, I know
So
you
the-
guys worked on it for quite a long
No,
time,
no,
so I mean, it's
no,
not,
I'm not saying that. I just think
not-
this is a restriction. It's not we're not increasing. We're drastically decreasing what's allowed currently because there is no limit on it
Yeah.
right now.
oh, I'm not arguing that
Yeah.
we should have a limit. I'm just saying it should be.
Mhm.
I just have a question in pertaining to process. So let's say we have 5 applications come in this year, and then mid next year, we have another 5 come in, but we don't have our growth numbers at that point. Like, how does staff see those numbers of our city, and what are you looking at? I mean, if somebody comes in August of 2023, what will you look at to see what our population is at that point?
So in the code, it does talk about the procedure is set forth for issuing the number of permits by the city manager. What we would probably look at is the number of households that have utility accounts, and that would be the count that we would administratively decide. So that's how, and in that, and that's something you can take out of there if you want. It's based on specifically called out as households that are connected to utilities, and that's perfectly within your purview. But we did put that provision that the process is administered by the city manager, just to allow some flexibility on how we handle those applications as they come in, so that, because sometimes you don't necessarily want your code to be your procedure documents. They're the
That helps. I just,
guiding
knowing
point.
that the census is every 10 years, I was just wondering what we would use to.
Well, the code specifically calls out residential units. So
Mhm.
it's not a population-based number. It's a residential unit-based number, which is documented month by month with utility accounts.
I was going to say, also we talk about this being their permanent or primary residence. For them to keep that, then year after year, they would only be able to rent out half of the year. Because if they went anything over that, then when they
They would
reapply
lose
for
it.
it, they would lose it. Is that correct? Because it's only in the original application that we talk about that. I don't,
I mean, that's a tough one because they only will come back for a 1-year review based on planning commission's CUP.
mhm.
And after that, the business license gets automatically renewed. So I don't know how that gets, that's a good question.
Because
Well, I would interject just a little bit. The business license isn't an automatic renewal. There's procedures
Well,
each year to double check, but.
But the way it was explained by Kim and Planning Commission is that it would just, basically, it's a formality to renew that business license after the initial 1 year come back in to meet with Planning Commission. No one's gonna come back into Planning Commission or anywhere else to verify any of that, I
Yeah.
don't think. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we need to put that on the business license application for that form.
We could do that, or administratively, we can set up through code enforcement to check these and just ensure that this is the primary residence of the owner, right? That it
And it's
hasn't
not that
transferred
many,
names.
so.
Mhm.
one of the things that I've seen in other cities is instead of just making a general CUP, they make it a special CUP or a special business permit, whichever way you want to call it. But they usually keep it in the CUP form, which is a 1 year. And it requires, as part of this special CUP, that they come back every 1 year to review and to see if they get the license. And then it gives the 3 things that would disqualify them. One, of course, going over the 3 violations. Next, no longer being the owner because it's not transferable. So it can't be going to a corporation or any of those kind of things. And then the status of the person who's applying. Is it still their primary residence, and are they still paying the taxes? And some cities even require that they have some form of like business insurance or rental insurance for the people that go there and around it. So to me, I kind of liked that idea of having that special one, because you're right. I mean, as a business license, we don't even have a reason to deny them the business license or a process to go through that.
Well,
But-
there is an annual process of inspection for a business
True.
license
There
where,
is.
you know, there's a fire inspection and there's code enforcement inspection. That does happen for business license renewal. It's not just renewal application, stamp it, send it out the door. There is a process and a check that takes place on all business license renewals.
So
Was it fire every 2?
I don't
Is it every
remember
year?
that exactly.
it may be worth walking through our recent example with Cobblestone to see what things
Good
were
idea.
available to the city and what gaps might exist in that business license process. I'll express just my general preference. A special CUP, my spidey sense goes off just a little bit, because CUPs are a property right.
Mhm.
And so the legal rights that an individual property owner would have against the city are just a little bit stronger than if it were a business license renewal. They still have a right in the business license renewal, but it's a due process right, not a property right. And I think what I'd recommend looking at is to make sure that our checklist when we're doing business license renewals includes a look at the kinds of things that come up that might force the city to change its mind. And if we look at Cobblestone, which is our most recent example, and I'd argue the best and most recent example anywhere in the state, they came forward for a business license after the court said we could require a business license. And when we looked at the business license application, one of the things we did was pull the police records on the location. And we found that, what was it, 56 or 57 different incidents in a year's time. And they ranged everything from shooting to underage drinking to illegal drug use, you name it, it was on that list. And the city then made a decision to deny the business license application. And that was upheld not just on appeal to the city council, but now on appeal to the district court and to the Court of Appeals. And we have a really nice decision that says you can do this, right? And the city can enforce its ordinances in that way. And as close as we can keep to that process, I think the easier it is for us to defend it. We point to that case and say, look, we've been down this road and this is where it leads, and you can try to challenge it. But, you know, this is where we think it'll end up.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So are we, the way we're currently set up, having the planning commission basically approve or deny a CUP for a short-term rental?
Well,
Are we-
the CUP would exist, but a condition of allowing that use is that they have a
Business
business
license.
license. And then the business license ordinance allows you to look at basically good behavior, right? And if you are operating your business in a way that is anywhere from fraudulent to illegal to criminal, then you can revoke or deny a business license application on those grounds. And it would even apply if you had a property owner that, you know, was denied a license on one property and then sought a license on another property. You can look to the applicant's past behavior, not the property itself.
We actually have examples of property owners applying, and we have been able to tell them, let me say it this way. If you start operating before you get a conditional use permit and a business license, we can go in and shut them down. Say you do not have a CUP and a business license, you cannot operate. And so that's what we've done. And we've said, you can't do this until you get these things. And so then they go through the application process. Our ordinance has stood up to that already multiple times. When we hear of anybody operating a short-term rental, we have, you know, court backing now to be able to go and say, you are not allowed to do that. You don't have a business license. So our ordinances have stood up to the test already. What's before you tonight is tightening of that ordinance. and adding some additional provisions to just bolster it.
Yeah, those 4 items are just items that we saw that were lacking, and that's why I originally wanted to review it again. And we talked about it when we originally did it with it, we review it. And so that's all they are. And I'm sure if we want to change them, that's totally up for discussion.
As far as a procedure, if there are items that the council wants to adjust in the ordinance, you have essentially 2 options. Jamie can correct me if I misspeak at all here, but if it's a minor code text and you all agree and say that's what we want, you can, make that part of the motion and add that language. Or if you feel it's more substantial and you want to, see it in writing in black and white, then you can suggest that and continue the item, requesting those amendments be made, and we can bring it back with the final version essentially documented, and you can see that. So if there are changes to any of these items or any others.
So Mayor, I've got a couple of questions on this. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
So the 2 areas of concern that I had was the ownership for 12 months, and then also the maximum not to exceed 25. First of all, on the ownership, the way it's written, it says single-family homes where they are the primary or principal place of residence, and then in a separate sentence, it says they just need to prove that they've owned the home for 12 consecutive months. So how do we make sure this does not become a quote unquote business? Somebody buys a house, rents it out to somebody for a year, and then turns it into a short-term rental.
So Quinn, that's a really good question. I have the same one. And I'm wondering if it's something we could do on the IADUs, where we stipulated that they had to be qualified to vote in that city or something, which meant that they had to be there for 12 months, or how did we do that to make sure?
Yeah,
that
we didn't want to define what it meant to have something be your primary residence. So we pointed to the election code because it had nice carve outs for things like military service, missionary service, other things that may take you away from a home, but it will
Not
still be
right.
considered your residence for voting purposes. So
Can we put something similar in
yeah,
this
I
one?
think you would it is in this.
It is in there.
Uses the same definition that we used in that other
Okay.
area. And then Trevor leaned over and made a good point that I had forgotten about, that the city initiated this ordinance in January. It's a land use ordinance that you're considering, and the state land use law provides a 6-month window within which you can consider and adopt an ordinance. Once that 6 months has passed, then somebody could apply under the ordinance that existed up until now. I'm not aware of any pending applications, but just be aware if you continue the item, you're going to run a few days over that 6
Yeah,
months.
there is a pending application. Am I still correct?
Is there one?
Yes.
Yes, as
Okay.
far as we know, it hasn't been pulled. There has been talk that the property is sold, so it could have been pulled, but we haven't got any notification from the
All
property.
right. With that being the case, I guess I would recommend considering the ordinance today instead of continuing it to a later meeting.
What's the exact date, Trevor?
January 11th was the day that it was initiated.
So to answer Quinn's question though, I mean, is it a problem with both of those distinctions in there? One says 12 months primary residence, the other one, because I mean, someone could long-term rent that house out. That's not,
Yeah,
we can't tell them they can't do a long-term rental in there. for
Quinn
12
raises a
months,
good
but-
point. We should make.
I mean, how do you prove that they've actually lived in that home for a year? I
Yeah,
mean, you can show ownership for a year easily, but that it's been their primary principal place of residence, it's not. It doesn't say that. The sentence says they just need to show that it's their primary principal place of residence, not for a year. So that means permanently.
I mean, I guess do we,
Could we do it like based on their driver's
but do we,
license address?
I guess, do we care if it was an ownership versus, I mean, that's just an open question. I don't think any of us even talked about that in the committee. Whether we just talked about owning it for 12 months. That was the discussion, and having it be their primary residence. We didn't distinguish between the two.
Well, if you
That's a
look
good
on,
question.
if you look on page 165 of the packet that shows the language of the ordinance, 101812 primary residence, I think that it covers the concern already.
And I don't think it does. Because it's two separate sentences and they're not tied together.
Well, because they cover two separate things. One is to demonstrate the primary principal place of residence, and that is a specific definition that shows length of stay, that you've been there, you know, those types of things. That's why we've said that in the past, is that we're not the ones that have to define that. There's already a definition that they have to follow.
In that Utah code.
Yes, exactly. And then adding the layer of they have to demonstrate, right? The owner of the subject property has to demonstrate that they have that ownership no less than 12 consecutive months. So it just adds an additional layer.
So it could be like A and B rather than two, just a
Yeah,
paragraph.
and Quinn, I believe what you're asking is whether we want to require as a matter of policy that they not only own it for 12 months, but own it as their primary residence for 12 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I think that was the original intent of
Yeah, and I
short-term
agree
rentals.
with you.
Yeah.
There's a little gap in how this is written, and I'm looking at it, trying to think of what I would propose as a text amendment, but I think we can.
Because if they own it for 12 months, then they can turn it into a business and walk away.
I think what I'd recommend is in that second paragraph that we say, applications for short-term rental should not be accepted until which time the owner of the subject property has demonstrated ownership and residence of ownership and use of the property as their primary residence for no less than 12 consecutive months. Would that accomplish what you're aiming at?
I am, yeah. I just want to make sure somebody's not just using it as a business opportunity, and they've got to commit for at least a year.
So just,
If they go find another home somewhere else to live in and then turn it into just a all year long short-term rental, that's not really the intent of short-term rentals initially. It wasn't to become businesses. It's just for owners to be able to rent out their home for a few times if they're going to be gone or something, right?
Yeah.
And people are turning them into businesses and buying up homes all over the place and short-term renting everywhere.
Well, my understanding of that first section, right, the Utah code, is that it does have a time
It
element.
does, it's just not 12 months.
It's not 12
Yeah.
months. But the idea that after 12 months, that it's no longer their primary place of residence, that's still covered in that Utah definition. Because if they didn't live there for a certain period of, let's say they only lived there for 6 months, if that's the number, I don't remember off the top of my head. Let's assume it's 6 months, and then they are gone for a certain period of time, and then it doesn't come back. They don't come back, and it's no longer their primary place of residence, then it doesn't meet that first statement anymore. It's no longer their primary place of residence.
And that's what I'd just like to understand. Does this mean that both of those must apply for them to get their renewal?
That's what I was saying, is that it's kind of double coverage. We're saying that it has to meet the state definition, and we are adding an extended amount of time that we want them to actually live there and be there.
so just to kind of give an idea, Cottonwood Heights on the application and the renewal application requires them to provide proof of ownership, copy of the transfer deed, proof of primary residency, present federal and state tax returns showing property address, present government issued ID showing property address, and then they have a signed affidavit which basically says that they agree to all of the city codes and have read all the city codes and whatnot. So I'm saying, yes, it could work like that, but yeah, I'm one of those guys that really over nails and over screws every project that I ever work on.
But that could all be procedural.
And it could be, and down at
That
the
is
bottom, I think you
basically,
say it in the application.
it's up to staff to prove, or them to prove when they come to planning commission for the application, their primary residency.
Yeah.
How that gets done, Do we want that in our code?
Well, and the application, if it's just in the application, Jamie, is that a legal reason to be able to deny them, or would they be able to come back and say that's, you can't?
Well,
I would assume.
we're already asking for proof of residency. It's whether we want them to be, I mean, to Quinn's
12 months
question,
later
is,
when
do we
they do the
want them to
renewal.
have that be their primary residence for 12 months? Stated out clearly, and I think that's a very easy thing to add if that's what we want.
I think Jamie's suggested language covered that.
I think so very easily.
Can you repeat
Yeah.
that language for me?
Yeah, I'll read it in just a minute. And I'm too far away from David for him to kick me. So throw something at me, David, if I get out of line here. But in your comments, you raised an interesting point about how this is drafted. So if you read these as two separate requirements, one, that it be the primary or principal place of residence, and the second, that they have to own it for 12 months. I think what that means when you read them together is that the only time a property can be converted into a short-term rental is while the primary resident is away from the home, but still qualifies as the primary resident. Is that how this ordinance is intended to be read? Yes. It is? Okay. So there are very few exceptions to it being a primary residence when you're not present, and it really is missionary service, reassignment of your employment, or some kind of church or ecclesiastical service that takes you away from the home. So I think the way I would read this is, did I say military? No, military's on the list as well. Yeah.
But we also discussed possibly making exceptions for some of the military cases and things that we've had presented before us too.
Well, but if you're military or those other things, it still counts
It
as
still
your
counts
primary
as it
residence.
gives you an exemption. Yeah.
But it does, these two statements together means if you purchase a home and you establish that as your primary residence, but then say 3 months later, you have deployment or something, you still can't apply to be a short-term rental until you've had that for 12 months.
Right.
And we're also saying by making it a primary residence, you cannot purchase a home and never live there and turn it into a short-term rental. Or if you do purchase a home and you want it to be a permanent short-term rental, that's not possible because it still has to be your primary residence, which means you're only going to be renting it out intermittently when you're not there.
Or you can rent out a portion of your home as a short-term rental. So if you have a basement apartment, you can rent it as a short-term rental and still live 100% above
That's
it.
still your primary residence.
Right.
All right.
So I think the
So
question,
I'm comfortable, and to answer Haley's question of what the language is, Haley, it reads, applications for short-term rental shall not be accepted until which time the owner of the subject property has demonstrated ownership of and use of the home as their primary residence for no less than 12 consecutive months. So it's
Thank you.
just one more layer.
so to add on to that, though, we need to have clear expectations of how they prove that that's their primary residence.
I think administratively, so when they do the CUP, they just have to demonstrate that. And so the planning commission at that point can say, we need these documents.
Agreed, yeah, just so it's clear though. Because if I were to come up and say, this is my house, I swear I live there, as long as we have it clear.
Yeah, do you just want that as part of the
I think
application
it needs
process?
to be
Yeah,
part of the
absolutely.
application. Just the wording here says you don't accept the application until they demonstrate. So
Right.
in the application description, if we list what demonstrates it, I think we're covered.
Okay.
And then, sorry, just to follow up on my other comment, I appreciate us tightening our code and making sure that it doesn't have an unlimited amount. I also think 25 is too high. I mean, if we only have 5 right now, and we've had some unfortunate negative instances with short-term rentals, I would, along with Joel, I would rather start at low at 10 or 15 max. And if everybody's doing a great job and they're all, wonderful, okay, then we look at maybe extending it. But, yeah, we can only have up to 10 right now, but that's twice as many as we currently have. And do we want twice as many problems as we currently have? Well, maybe we won't, because we just didn't have it all, all these rules to control the ones that have been out of hand. So anyway, I just lean to having that number be lower than 25 max at city build out. Because what if all 25 are in one neighborhood? All those residents aren't going to be happy.
Well, and they are gonna get pushed a couple directions because of our 2,000 feet.
Yep.
And 2,000 feet, when you draw 2,000 feet around our schools, that pretty much leaves them in one or two areas in the city. So you have a good point. I'm okay with reducing that number to something lower.
So just
I
one
am
more,
too.
one more quick question, and this is, Trevor, you're the one that made me just think of this. So I thought the intent really of having owner occupied was that when they rent it, the owner's there. And in my mind, I know that everything that I've read says that any type of problems go down drastically when the owner still lives there. Kind of more as a bed and breakfast type, if you will, than it is a party central. So we're not requiring at all the owner actually live in the house still while this is going on. Okay.
That's something that planning commission can ask. I mean, planning commission has a pretty broad brush when it comes to what they require.
I think the intent is to push them like that, right? That is the direction.
But we're not
This-
specifically
But it's
stating
not
that. Yeah, and
requiring
that's-
it.
We could require
It
it.
does
but yeah,
create exceptions.
We've
right,
had that
to
discussion too.
For sure.
Quite bet you guys.
Quinn, did you get all your questions answered? Do you
I
have
did,
more?
yes. Yes.
I just have a few. On pets, we have the definition of pets. And I think we want to put an S on means, because right now we have pets. It's mean dogs, cats, and other domesticated animals. I think good dogs apply too. We probably want to put pets means dogs, cats, and also on occupant. I think we're missing an S on that means. Going back to the conversation we just had about owner occupied, I just want to make sure that an owner is an individual and not like an LLC or a corporation or a trustee or anything like that. Is the way the code written protect us from something of that nature?
I don't believe you can do that legally.
No.
Because what if I have my assets in a trust
I
or
guess I'm
something?
not worried about a trust so much as I am a corporation or an LLC.
Yeah, and
But what
think-
if I have
think-
my business own my house?
Well,
I
but-
know. I'm just
but mo-
saying
but-
it just,
But
I don't know.
most trusts have, so my home's owned by an LLC. So
okay. It was more so of preventing corporations from buying them up and then putting someone there to live. But
And-
it's a far-fetched possibility, I guess.
And
maybe.
Sandy actually points that out. They actually require that it cannot be a corporation, an LLC, or a trust for any of theirs. Because like you said, yeah, you've got it, but again, it's another way of stopping somebody coming in and now, well, I can't get a business license, so we'll put it to the next person that's in the corporation. And as long as they're in the corporation, they can be designated as the person applying for the license. So, anyway, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm feeling a little conflicted because you want to protect the residents, but you also want to protect the property owner to a degree. I don't want to strip them of their rights to do what they will with their property, but I also want to make sure that we protect them. So I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, I think the 12 months ownership and the primary property owner will help deter that. And then I agree with the number. We were actually speaking in code about writing code for future councils and the difficulty that can mean when you write something and then kind of tie the hands of the future. And as Jill said, in 5 years, we might, I don't know if we'll be at build out, but maybe we're at build out and we have 25 and nobody wanted that. We can't go back on it. So I agree with 10. And I wondered if we could just write the language being 10 at max and then something to be reviewed at the discretion of the council for increasing number of permits. And it leaves it on those who are elected at that time to decide what they want to do for their residents at that time.
I don't know if you have to add the provision at the discretion of the council, because the council always has the
That's
discretion to
true.
review code, so.
They wanted to simply change the number.
So we
From
can
a-
just say the max is 10 and just leave it at that. So Quinn, I think you said you were good with 10. Is that right?
I am, yeah, 10's fine.
Joel, you're good with 10?
Yep.
I'm good with 10. You two down there?
I think they are.
I mean, it's an arbitrary number. I think it's a little
Well, Blair said he
restrictive.
was, but I never heard
But
him
I,
mention.
but I didn't, the number 25, we just came up with what is the max it build out? I mean, we came up with the
No, I
number
think it makes
based on a
total sense.
percentage, but
I do.
so
I think it's a very
I'm just-
logical way to figure it
my
out.
guess is you currently have 10 in the city. I guarantee you, not permitted. I mean, they're not, he said no, but there's too many other things we get emails on and that kind of stuff that there's several more short-term rentals going on. I'm sure we have 10 now. So it kind of depends on where we really feel like we need it to end up in the long run. I was more comfortable with 15. That's reducing it 10, but 10 is, I mean, I'd live with 10. I'm not gonna vote no to not get this passed, so. I'll
I
leave
think
it
that's
to-
something like maybe, I don't know, if staff can let us know, okay, hey, you have, or reach 10 and next year you've had 45 applications. You know, or is there a desire to increase this amount or something? If we know the demand but it's hard to go back on them once you allow them, so.
Well, and I don't know if we should be jumping up the number because we have some out there that are actively operating without a business license and knowingly kind of skirting around the rules. So I wouldn't bend
Well,
for
from a
them.
code enforcement perspective, if we know those, we have every ability to go and shut those down.
Yep.
So we just need to know of them.
For me, the hope is this tightening would make them, you know, much more appropriate and problem-free. And if that's the case, then yeah, we can open up to a higher number. But, you know, let them demonstrate that. Make sure that we've captured everything we need to before I mean, we could have up to 10 right now, according to this 0.5%.
So I'm not married to the number. I appreciate the thought process in where we came up with the number, because it does seem so arbitrary that we say, no, right now 10. But how do you defend that? That's just the temperature of the council that night, said 10. And it makes it so much easier, I think, for staff. It's spelled out right here. So anyone who comes in, they can say this is exactly the process. So I'm not married to 25, but I feel like it makes more sense for us now and in the future to have a logical process. So if you want to take that down to 20.25%, I'm okay with that. But I don't want it just to be an arbitrary number.
Okay, so if we remove or change it from 50% down to 25%, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah,
You'd be at max right now. though.
you'd be, yeah,
Which is what
We
we're
may
kind of,
be-
It
we
would be
may
a
yeah.
0.25%.
yeah, quarter of a
Perfect.
percent.
yeah.
We
That
actually
would
may be
mean
over
you're
it.
at capacity, just so you're aware.
So I mean, that I think gets rid of the number 10, but it keeps it down at the same around 10. I guess I think I need to ask it because Blair, you brought it up. Is there any appetite for no short-term rentals in the city?
I feel like I'm getting, and Haley hit on it. I don't favor them personally, but I feel like I'm treading on some people's property rights by completely banning it, and I'm opposed to that.
And see, of course, goes back to
But if they're done properly, and I know if they're done properly and the people it's their primary residence,
yeah.
and you're being a good neighbor, there's not a problem with them. I mean, we don't have complaints about the people who operate them properly.
Which are a lot, I mean, a lot of them are just,
Yeah,
they're there
it's
8 months of the year and they rent them out.
Or
for
they're
a
even
week here
there,
while
or
they're
they're
on
just doing it
vacation
one
or
or two
whatever.
nights
Mhm.
to make some extra money to pay the mortgage, especially in times like right now.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's what I've always gone with is you've got the right to swing your arms as far as you want, right up to my nose. And then once you go there, you've gone too far. So
yeah.
I kind of agree with that. You brought it up and it kind of made me think, have we addressed that again of just saying no? And like I said, Harriman, that's what they've done. They just said none. And there's a bunch of cities that do that. So
That is where I think because we started going into this code 4 years ago or whatever it was, is we were gonna say no, but then as we got into committee discussions, we couldn't bring ourselves to saying no. So,
And to Angie's question, I think a justification, back to the number, I would struggle with going to the 0.25% because that's basically saying no for any new stuff. Go to the 10, our justification is doubling what we currently allow. And with the option of if we have no problems over the next couple of years, then it could be revisited. If a lot more people are wanting to do that, they can petition the city and say, hey, would you please relook at this? Maxed out at 10. Here's 3 families that would like to do it. And this is the benefit it would be to them. They come back and have fun 3 months out of the year, and it would help me with finances. But then you at least are going through a process of them justifying with good history, increasing the number.
So one last question then to Jamie, and this will help me a lot on it, is with land, you have a grandfathered clause. So because we're using a CUP to allow it, is that why any of the rules we're doing are grandfathered in? Because if a city changes a normal ordinance, that ordinance takes place on a certain date and it changes. And if you're running a business and we've just changed the way that you can run that business, that they don't have a grandfather clause for all of that. It's only if it's moving with the land. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's why I would prefer the decision about whether their behavior precludes the operation of a short-term rental be at the business license level and not at the CUP level.
Okay.
Once
okay.
their CUP is approved, then it's a vested property right. And the only basis on which the city can revoke it is if they've violated the express terms of the CUP. So I'd prefer the CUP be conditioned on an active business license, and then we keep that decision on the business license on the bases we know we can support.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think we've had enough discussion. We need to move on. So let's look for a vote or a continuation, whatever you'd like to do.
I'll make a motion. Mayor, I make a motion that I move to amend ordinance 22-08, amend Title 10, Chapter 18, short-term or vacation rentals with the following changes. Application should demonstrate that you are property owners. Update definitions on occupation and pets to include the word means instead of mean. Include Jamie's remarks as given for section 10-18-12 primary residence, and change total number of allowed rentals to 10. Did I get everything? Yes.
Clarification, I thought Jamie changed his mind and said that that covered both the way it's currently worded.
No,
You still want to
I'm
change?
glad you asked that question. I was trying to understand what the intent was of how it's currently drafted, but I think what you're adding now is a third criteria that relates to the
Okay.
two. So
Then
it
that's
used
correct.
to, yeah, so I think that's right.
Sorry.
I just have one question before we make a approve or deny. You have limit of 10. Are we still calculating it at 0.5% or at 0.25%?
No percentage, just a limit of 10.
You're not going to put 0.5% in there?
Well, half a percentage was be 6, wouldn't it? Or a quarter of a percentage?
Yeah, because right now we're still, I mean, I guess.
0.5% puts us at 10.
At
So if
10
you
now.
say
Oh,
I
half a
thought
percent,
I thought half a
never gonna
percent put
go
us
up.
at 6, which is what we're at currently.
No,
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood.
no,
A 1/4% puts
A
us
quarter
at
of a
5.
percent would put us
yeah.
at 5. 0.5% would put us at 10. Okay,
do that.
sorry, I misunderstood there. Okay, Michelle, just amend that to a limit of 10 to limit to 0.5% of.
I think we didn't, I think we weren't going to change the 0.5%. We were just
We're
going to
just
say
going to
not
change
to exceed 10.
25 to 10.
Oh, okay.
Because 0.5% is what we currently have right now, equaling 10.
But if you read it all together, that's why I'm asking, because I almost feel like right now it's an either or, because you can't say the number of available permits shall be calculated 0.5% of the total number of residential units within city limits not to exceed 10. Because then we're saying that as of now, that's it, no more.
Well, but we don't have that.
We don't have
We don't
that many
have 10
though.
right
That's
now.
why I'm so confused why we keep saying that. We have 6 right now. And we're saying not to exceed 10. So that would be, would that be
I think the
0.5 or
I think-
0.25?
I think the confusion is that calculating 0.5% today is more than 10.
It is.
So, well, it's right at 10. So you're basically limiting the 0.5% and the 10 is the same number as of right now.
Okay, so just to say not to exceed 10 in section 10-18-13. Does that work?
And my comment on that is if you leave the wording as is, 0.5%, then if a future council wants to increase it, all they have to do is change the number. They don't have to add in, but I guess they could change the number anyway. I don't know. Yeah, either way.
The
It works.
verbiage would make more sense with 15, just so you know, but that's okay.
Well, that's my motion. So how about it?
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
I second that.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Dale.
Aye.
Aye.
Gwen?
Aye.
No,
Because I don't have a problem with it, restricting it more.
Okay, 4 yeses and 1 no. Motion carries. Next item, resolution 22-24, approval municipal wastewater planning program annual report. Any discussion on this report?
Just thank Quinn for those questions. I had the same ones and very helpful.
Okay. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve resolution 22-24, approve municipal wastewater planning program annual report.
Seconded.
We have a second. We'll start with a roll call vote by Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Next item, resolution 22-25, development agreement for South Weber Gateway. Have some discussion on this.
I just have a question regarding Paul's comments for the diagram that we have. That phasing picture is from the old way that the buildings were laid out. Does that matter on the exhibit if it's not the correct, but the wording is correct?
So the wording would require that when we produce a building permit, that we couldn't permit for any more than 30 townhome units.
So even if the exhibit shows 31, it's the
Right.
wording that would matter?
We couldn't issue any permits for more than 30 until the parameters are done. Now, the exhibit, it was pulled from the preliminary plan review because that was the last time we had a phasing plan. So if you would like to have an updated exhibit showing the current plat or current site plan with those, then we probably have that.
If you're concerned at all that it could be interpreted differently, then I think what you could do is when you make your motion to approve this tonight, just make it conditioned on the phasing plan being updated to reflect the 30 units in that phase instead of 31.
Okay, thank you.
Just a point of clarification for me. Let's say they get halfway done with phase 1 and determine to go on to phase 2 and they've completed all the rest of the commercial in phase 1, would they then be allowed to continue phase 1 and do phase 2 concurrently?
Yes. Oh, I heard a mumble. I thought it was Dave. Yes, if they've completed all the commercial components, that was the intent of it, that once those are completed and they're ready to move on to phase 2, they would have the ability to do that. It wasn't contingent on the development of the residential, it was just the commercial development.
Thank you for clarification.
Quinn, you got any discussion on this?
No, most of my questions got answered previously.
Okay.
And then Jamie, can you just clarify that the motion regarding reverter clause, if they don't build, the commercial doesn't need to be in this development agreement because it was part of that original motion?
Yeah, that clause was included in the zoning ordinance, and this development agreement does not affect the zoning ordinance at all.
Thank you. Coyne, did you get your question answered regarding the walking path? I'm sorry, I was catching up on emails, so I didn't see them all come through.
I did, yeah. And I guess that's something we ought to bring up, to replace the exhibit in there with the sketch that I created. We just need to make sure that
And
the developer agrees with that.
Quinn's question came up after the packet was published, but I forwarded an updated version of Exhibit F that includes the image Quinn forwarded. So that can reflect the walking path as he wanted it.
Okay.
Do we need to show that to the developer?
It was all the way to the property line, the walking path.
Let me open it up and I'll show him right now. Lisa, do you happen to have the version I sent? And is it possible to put it up on the board?
It's in the packet.
The updated trails in the packet?
It says walking path extended to the property line. And there's little.
Right,
red-
but they just show a little red rectangle that doesn't actually connect to the walking path.
Quinn asked that instead of the red rectangle that it be drawn out.
Oh, you go all the
full
way to
length.
the
Right.
left-hand side from the property. line.
Right, yeah, I don't want them to just put a tiny little sidewalk from just on the one side of the house. I want it
That's the
to
one.
connect over the walking path. That's what we originally asked for.
Lisa, if you open that Word document and go to the last page.
Right. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's the old image.
He sent the email at 6:10 today. I
Don't
think
worry,
it
that's
pulled,
not
it pulled up an old one.
He just sent it.
Yeah.
There it is. No, that's the right one.
Is that agreeable with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes, I think that was the intent anyway. Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Then I'd ask for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 22-25 development agreement for South Weber Gateway Did I say amend or approve? I meant to amend. With the changes to amend.
Approve with amendments.
Approve with amendments, amend Exhibit D to indicate phasing to only 30 units and the walking path to go to the property line. Is that everything?
Just one question. On our copy here, it says Resolution 22-27, and our agenda says 25.
25.
25? Okay.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, we'll begin with the roll call vote. Councilman Deal.
I still say that there's no reason for this. They should follow the code of multi-family dwellings. So I'm going to vote no.
Aye.
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 Okay, 4 yeses, 1 no. Motion will carry. 2 discussion items have canceled this evening, so we'll move on to number 14, City Hall layout concept. And we'll ask Dave to handle this one for us.
Okay, the goal tonight is to just talk conceptually. The council has put $50,000 into the current budget to refresh the carpet and paint in City Hall. And then the tentative budget for next year includes an additional $50,000, recognizing that the City Hall needs some attention and kind of a maintenance plan. And so in the packet, we painted a little bit of a picture. I'd like to add some detail to that. There's limited space here, obviously, in City Hall, as well as the need to just kind of refresh it and have it be the facility that we want it and need it to be for an extended period of time until such time as we make longer term plans. And so what has been discussed to this point has been, well, let me paint a picture of when residents or when businesses or entities that are doing business with the city come in, what's the experience that they have? The hope is that they, have a good impression of the city, that it's a welcoming environment here, that it's a nice place to work and do business with the city, that it gives the impression that we want and, kind of has the features of our city in City Hall. Well, as you look now, flow and function is limited and space is limited. We've been playing musical chairs a little bit as we've had employees come and go and trying to get back to fully staffed. And we look to be that way here within the next week or so. However, we don't have enough space for the employees currently, let alone the new one that will be here. So we're trying to just manage some of those things. So with that being said, the original thought was if we could create additional office space within the building or nearby the building and maybe a portable, then that could meet our needs for an extended period of time. From there, the thought was perhaps not creating more office space, but creating more or moving the meeting space. If you think of the use of this building, the area of the building that is used the least frequently is where we're all sitting now, right? This meeting space for planning commission, city council, and other large type public meetings. So the latest thought, and again, conceptually, is if we were to hold public meetings in a different location, then we could utilize this space for office space. If this space was utilized as office space, then we could significantly alter the flow of the building, its usefulness in doing city business. And so that's the concept. So the question that we're asking as staff at this point, thinking through, again, just that high level conceptual idea, we haven't gotten down into the weeds as far as numbers and things like that. We've done some preliminary look. But the question is, if meetings weren't held here, where should or where could they be held? The new public works facility, when it's built, will have kind of a multi-use space that could function as a meeting space and would probably be the nicest space in the city at that point, at least city facilities. But that's not for a couple of years. So even if that was the longer term solution, what would you do in the meantime? Potentially you could meet at the FAC, or that portable idea is still one that's on the table, and maybe you do a portable here on site for meeting space, and that would free up the rest of the interior of the building for more office space and whatnot. That's the general concept. Again, there's a lot more that would need to be looked into as far as the cost to lease that type of space, for how long and whatnot. But for now, if there's no desire to pursue the concept, then we wouldn't put additional details into figuring those types of things out. We want to make sure that we use the $100,000 to refresh the building and maintain it goes as long as possible, right? That we're using that wisely and making sure that we have a fully fleshed out plan to make sure that that is just used well and last the city as long as we can make this facility last. Questions or reaction to the general concept?
Have we looked at working remote?
Yes, we have.
And
Based on the number of employees that are in City Hall, when we have employees working remotely, it severely limits our capacity in coverage. Even if one or two employees is out with sick or vacations or whatnot, coverage becomes limited. We did find a way to do it remotely throughout COVID, but there were challenges there that I think our service level was okay, but there were internal challenges and service delivery that I think could have been better during that period of time. And so, yes, it's an option, but I don't think that it provides as much as it.
And after reading all the studies that, like the people have done Jones Waldo and a few of those people in Salt Lake, it is not a successful program.
So here, I have a couple things that I just really want staff's perspective and help understanding on this, because we've had this discussion. Council's kind of given feedback. At the FAC, there's parking there, but then we have to transfer all of our streaming and everything like that. So that would not just be a smooth, straight over transition. I don't know what facility, like tables or a dais or anything like that that's being envisioned over there. But the FAC is already to max capacity. So there's nowhere for anything even like this to be stored. When we had our breakfast with Santa, we have, was it 8 or 9 round tables? And that was it. And we had over 300 people show up, and there was nowhere for any more tables to be stored. So in my mind, logistically, FAC, there's just no way. As far as public works, we've already talked about, the size of the building and the scope and shrinking it down. And based on that, we can have a certain amount of parking. If we have our city council meetings over there, then we're increasing our paved area, which is going to cost a lot. And I'm already having heart attacks over this. So I'm really struggling with having it over public works. So what I'm asking is, please explain to us how many offices we're really lacking. And is this a personal preference? People don't like to be up in the front, and so that's part of the issue. I mean, candidly, because I know some people don't like that, and they prefer to have an office. But I'm really trying to see where the need is. I know part of it was said that people don't want to walk through this chambers. If we put a door over here, is that even a possibility? Does that make us still compliant with ADA? I'm just trying to see how to make this work.
Yeah. I'll let Trevor and Max speak to that as well, but I'll give you my perspective. As far as the number of offices, we currently have a situation where we have 2 front desk employees, or we will here soon. We have had in the past, and we hope to continue to have a summer intern. We've forced the mayor out of his office and just his shared space when he's in the building to use one of the available offices, and employees move out of their space to accommodate that. Not that that's frequent, but that's what happens. We currently have shared office space in Lisa's office where Lisa and Marin sit, which is not ideal for court or for the treasurer. Yes, office space will adjust and become available with our public works director once the new building is built, that he would move over there, and that does create some additional space. We do not currently have workstation or workspace for code enforcement. They are basically forced to just be in their car as their office, and that has posed some challenges at times. So right now, it's one of those scenarios where we're functioning, we're doing it because that's what we've got. And the goal would be to make the building more functional for a longer period of time. And we recognize that over the next little while, as we continue to grow, that the space needs are going to adjust. We don't have good conference space. It's limited in the number of people that are available, as well as having that also be the hallway. The thinking is that if this was office space and maybe perhaps even the reception area, then you could use that space more as a conference space area and more utilized space that way. There's not break room space. Employees take their break in this room and will come and sit at the dais or sit here at this table. There's not that type of space. Collaboration space is just simply the conference room. There's not a lot of collaboration space that way as well. Those are some of the high level type things that we deal with. Again, we function. We provide a service to the city, and I think the residents are getting great service from city staff. I don't think this is necessarily dependent on personality or things like that. It's more on the service that's provided to the city and to the residents when they come in, or when property owners come in and have questions about development or about court or things like that. The flow and the function is limited that way. Additional thoughts?
As I look at it, well, there's actually two other times where we need rooms. When court is back in session, the prosecutor needs a room. And so it usually takes up we have to displace a person from one of the offices. And the public defender. If there's a public defender or just whoever, they like to meet with their clients. And so during court, there's a need for two people. The concept that, as I looked at it, was if this door here became the main greeting spot, then as they come into this building, all the offices are located to the right or the left. Anyone coming into this building would not start at one end and go all the distance. So it's a better flow. It is better, I think, for our customers when they come in. And the other thing is we do have meetings where people are coming in, developers are coming in, others come in. And we don't really have a good reception area, place for them to wait. They wait in here, and then when they meet, they have to walk from one end of the building to the other. If that became the new conference room, where the room that we have here, and that becomes a work area, people coming in for those meetings would have a direct access, would not walk past every office, would not disturb those who are working and so forth. All those meetings would come in and out of just that one door up front, which makes it a better flow for those who are coming into the building, as well as where we can service the individuals. So that's the concept from my standpoint, looking at it. I think it's better for the public when they come in. Let me just explain my concept that I proposed to David. Is this becomes the reception area with the counter. Over there is the court with adding a wall, not a permanent wall, but partition type wall.
In this room or?
Yes.
Okay.
Right
Where
over there where
Shaylee's at.
Shaylee is. becomes where the Lisa would be. And it'd have a window, so all court functions. We have a reception area right here. The main flow comes in through this door, and it's a T. You go right, left, or you go through a new door, which will be put right behind your, Angie, right behind you to the outside. If it was a big, and in the back, we would be ADA compliant. We would have better air conditioning, as a portable would have better heat, better air conditioning. All of the equipment that we have here, we just move the cables and we would be in that building in the back.
Can I just ask a quick question? So we looked at a couple different concept plans, and I thought the answer came back that there's very little we can do in ways of.
We
All
can
that.
only do a certain amount to this building. All that we're proposing to do to this building is to put a door in the back. Other than that, it's all cosmetic.
Yeah, that we can put temporary structures up, so it's temporary partitions wouldn't trigger that. The 20% is the is normally the ADA. Like once you change 20% of your building, then you trigger all the ADA compliance. So by punching a door through the back, that wouldn't necessarily trigger the 20%. We would make it ADA compliant as when we do that, so that because the public would go through it. But all of this is to say, right now we are a little stretched on space where we have shared offices and things like that. And so there's about 600 square feet in this room that could be utilized to give some breathing room. But what I think is important is talking about in 2 to 5 years from this point, where
That's a different discussion.
right. But what's triggered this conversation is that if we were to do cosmetic upgrades to this building, what we would not want to do to be fiscally responsible is just to make sure that the changes or the updates that we're making would be more permanent and not have to be redone again in a couple of years when a solution is found. So it's just a conversation at this point.
I just feel like, I feel like.
Conversation means everybody has a say so here. So let's hear from the council.
I'm just waiting for,
I just-
for our wise ones down there.
This one.
I don't think these guys are gonna speak.
I personally don't see a problem as this being a break area. Quite frankly, that, to me, that's not a real issue. Because it's more than sufficient for a break area. My husband's work, they have cube mates, so ideal situation or not, he's with somebody in probably the exact same amount of space, actually, right there. That's just how they do it. They've done it like that for years and it works out okay. So maybe not a preference, but it's totally doable. Maybe we need to better utilize this area. And I know it would be difficult to move tables in and out. We could have more permanent tables in this area or this area and shift chairs over for council. We don't have I mean, how many people do we have here? We have 4, I think we had 6 earlier. So just trying to better utilize our space. I appreciate not wanting to spend money foolishly, but I don't want to add a portable on if it's going to be several thousand a month. To me, that's not being a wise steward over our residents' money. So I wouldn't approve that.
So help me understand the portable. Bear in mind that my wife is an educator, so I'm
Yeah.
picturing
So there's a range, right? We could think of the brown and white portable classrooms with the green railing, right? That is a standard one that we could get, and they're typically a lot less expensive. They do have other models out there that look a little more modern. We've sent out some feelers to get quotes back. We haven't had any return yet. We had one return but they completely misquoted. They quoted me like a 3 classroom portable, and I was like, that's not what we need. So try again. So that's the idea. Is it's a modular building that can be placed on that. And they do come in a variety of sizes, corrugated steel on the outside, or it could be hardy board on the outside. There's a variety of options there.
And you're suggesting that the council meetings and the PC meetings would then be held out in the cubicle?
Correct. The size for those are 24 by 40. This room is 25 by 32. So,
And you still think that's more functional than moving office into something like that? I mean, I office several people in a portable.
Yeah.
That's
No,
why
we-
they come through, it's all done. It's not a courtroom.
They're
it's
both
not a-
doable, absolutely. Based on the different needs of the portable, when you do office space, they're more expensive than just a larger meeting space with the,
Dave, I would disagree with you.
okay.
It's an
From what
everyday,
I've seen.
it's an everyday thing with two offices in the end and a conference table in the middle. That's done, there's thousands and thousands
Sure.
and thousands of them. It's an everyday expense.
But then we'd be duplicating electricity and air conditioning. When if we move this out there, I mean, this is 3 times a month, basically, between us and PC.
Yeah.
Oh, and court. Yeah.
And all of the meetings. Like if they ever decided to have any
Any
additional
committee
meetings
meetings or
over there.
anything would move there too. Because I'm assuming you're talking that space would become office as well.
that space would
We
become offices, and
probably
we
use
talked
the-
about
if
using
we use that
as the conference
where
space.
it's currently reception.
Oh,
Again, there's
okay.
Because one of
all kinds of ideas here and.
Yeah. One of the pain points is just the awkwardness that it is to walk in for work through a meeting, right? As executive staff, if we have to have meetings about personnel or anything like that, we have to move those offsite because that room is not a private location. And so it just creates some awkwardness there on workflow. Anything's doable. We obviously are making it work, and we'll continue to make it work in whatever the capacity we're going to have. So we're grateful for the facilities that we do have. We're just talking about, well, how can we make a little bit more function as we do our day-to-day workload. So that was the crux of the
How much would
conversation.
one of those cubicles be?
I've seen basic quotes for about $1,100 a month for the portable classroom, but I haven't received any for sure back. What's continuing is we do have to make it ADA compliant, so it has to be ramp and everything like that. And so that's kind of the variability on that. And so I had to get that back from them.
And you also mentioned, like over at the FAC, well, what about where the council sits and so forth? So we also have looked at the possibility of a modular dais and in more of a true horseshoe. One of the options that we've discussed would be the advantages of having one that's more of a horseshoe and it has 12 positions. So all the staff and the council basically can see each other better, be at one end of it, then the public and so forth would be there. That would also mean that if we were to move in the future over, say, to Public Works or somewhere else, instead of a built-in structure like this, and it could move with us, and so could move wherever the council
When you
went.
say the FAC, are you talking the gym? Are you talking?
Well, I mean, the Public Works, excuse me.
I
if
know,
it
but
moved
I'm
over.
saying the FAC for this modular, what
Well,
room?
we were looking at that at one end of the unit in the back. So
When we talk about the potential of using the FAC, though, it would be the multi-purpose room would be the one. I don't believe we
music
would
room.
want, yeah, the music room. I don't believe we'd want it in the aerobics room or the gym.
None of those
are
options
perfect.
are very savory, right? I think that we're all feeling that same thing.
And like I said, right now, there's no major issue there. We're not all sitting on top of each other. The building isn't falling down. Everything is good. We just wanted to have the conversation of eventually in 2, 5, 10 years from now, there's going to be more staff. And so we need to maybe think of what are the transitional steps we can take, because we know what impact the public works facility is having on our budget.
My most immediate need is I look at we now have a city treasurer who is an appointed position, who is a full-time, and she is basically in what we just created as temporary, a temporary area and bunking, I'd say bunking with Lisa in Lisa's office. And so that was one of my concerns. We did have, the treasurer at one point did have an office. When we added Trevor's position, that position disappeared. We used to have a place for the mayor or the council to come if you wanted to meet with the public in private, have a door that you can close. And now now we're looking to see if there is somebody who's not here that day that the mayor could have, or if a council member, there have been times when council members have wanted to meet. We also are having, the sheriff's office is now meeting in here at the beginning of shifts. And so they have 5 or 6 people who come and use the facility.
What you saying, Rob?
And the portable even fit back there?
Yes, we've
We
measured.
measured it.
But you lose some parking spaces, right?
It was about 4 parking spaces, but we would have to get some checking. We may be able to still add some angled parking on the back side of the portable if we orient it correctly. So we'd have to look at.
So
how to engineer
Dave, the
parking
one you
lot.
showed me the other day, the portable, it's nice looking, but it was $2,500 a month. Isn't that what you said that was gonna cost us for that one?
Again, the numbers are still, we haven't
I
gotten
don't-
exact quotes. but
The portable offices, I did get a quote, and what they quoted us was $2,500 a month for the portable offices. And that was
How
with-
many offices was that?
That was 2 offices with a common space. It was a 60, but that's another thing that size would not fit on this property. It would have to go on Public Works property, and so that's where.
Is it too long?
It's too long, yes. We have about 40 feet max of where we can, 44 feet max of where we can go on this. and
53
so-
or something?
Yeah, 53 to 68, I think. And
So-
I
I'm
think
sorry.
there's still
No, I
some-
have a question. I'm not getting, because the previous concepts that we planned was all the same interior and everything where we were talking about. So was that more than 20%, or because it was all interior that you said we can't put up any walls or anything like that? So is that not the case, or it is the case?
Yeah, some of the concepts that was shown were modifying office spaces over there, right, and reorienting some office space over there. That portion of the building would constitute close to 20% of the whole facility. So.
But we can totally change this whole area and
If we
that's not
just move
20%?
furniture.
Permanent structures.
Yeah, we would just be putting temporary things in. If you walk into like an open office concept, right, they have all the cubicles or temporary walls and things like that. It would be more of that feel. We wouldn't be actually removing walls.
There
and
could be
building
temporary
walls.
glass walls
Those
or-
other concepts
got
are
it.
more of the.
So here's my 2 cents on this whole thing is I feel like the number one question that we need to ask is where would council go? Obviously, I agree with Angie that the FAC is, I don't think that's going to work. The streaming, which we spent a significant amount of money to get, would be difficult. But secondly, it's busy. I have actually been trying to get into that FAC for about 4 months now. And every day I call and say, hey, can I get this room? And every night it's booked. I do not want to take that from our residents. There is some frustration about how it's closed for a good chunk of the year, for a good chunk of the day. So it's not something that I want to take more time away from them. The cubicle out here, at the 11,000, that's we're over budget of our 100,000 within a year. Even at the 2,500, we can do that for a couple years, and then I don't.
It'd be 1,100.
1,100.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking 11,000 was a lot. We need to consider how we would pay for that until Public Works came in. Would that need to stay here until Public Works came in, or?
It could be indefinitely until we decide on a future city hall.
And that is cheaper than building a new areas or adding to the Public Works. We can't.
Yeah, that was my
we
other
cannot
thing that I
add to Public Works.
That was
No
the other
way.
thing I was going to bring up is adding to Public Works. That number that's being floated around makes me want to vomit and not sleep at night. It's horrific. So adding anything to that is an absolute no on my brain right now. So I don't know really where that leaves us. I don't think the FAC is a viable option. I guess we need to discuss budgeting a trailer. But Public Works extending, getting bigger to be able to accommodate this too. I just don't see how we can do it without increasing that cost, which is already way too high.
So I got it figured out. Serious. I've got this whole thing. So if you need office space, we can do kind of the cubicle that you're thinking. What we got to do is we got to look around town and find something that could house all of it. Say like, I don't know, like a big, giant, ugly gray boat. And instead of putting a cubicle, we could move the big, ugly boat to the back of the building, fill it with offices. You know, something is just making.
Do you want the city to own that boat?
Maybe the only way we get rid of it.
Might be the only thing we can afford.
To clarify, we had talked about offices, and that's definitely doable. We could do the temporary offices. We can do smaller units. They have smaller modular units that don't have a meeting space in there and just office spaces. One concern just with staff is that there's already that wing and this wing, and then it would be the outside wing. So for as small as a group we are, just continue to divide and separate more. It's just a little bit cumbersome on coordinating and working together.
If you do a smaller meeting room, not necessarily this, I mean, and you just remodel that in, does it give you enough space for a year or two? I mean, again, the long-term solution is not this building. We all know that. But that's long-term, and we're tackling one thing at a time, and we've been tackling them. And this isn't the next one to tackle.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm just looking, you can get a smaller that just handles, because one of the most awkward things to me is that meeting room. For our city manager, for Trevor, for everybody in there coming and going in the middle of meetings. Some meetings are more heated than other meetings in there. And staff walking in and out, it's not comfortable for them, probably more so than the people in the room.
And that really was one of the main reasons we were thinking if it was this room, which has an outside door, no other offices that it would affect, and moving the front to the middle here.
I'm just trying to think of, this is a lot bigger thing to move from a city council perspective, because there are times that this place is packed.
One thing that we haven't
You gotta
talked
have that
about.
capacity.
One thing we haven't talked about is
Cubicle is actually larger,
Well,
wasn't it?
it would be, it can't be a whole lot larger. You're not gonna have space.
we could get a 14-foot by 24, I think I've seen, that we could probably accommodate. One thing to consider too is if we do all of the changes to, so let's do the cosmetic changes, the office. If we were to gut the dais and do a different solution, there I've seen round daises and have a different solution for city council meetings, where a round dais could work for a council meeting, plus it could double as a meeting location. So moving that over in here, but it doesn't necessarily remove it, but it does create a different use of the space. So
Trying to think multifunctionally, right? That we have space, how do we create dual
Thank you,
use,
Jamie.
things like that.
So have we looked at, because out of all of them, and from what I'm hearing from fellow council, is that all the options so far really don't work. And the cubicle is probably the least painful out of all of them.
When you say cubicle, do you mean?
Or sorry, not the
do you mean
cubicle, yeah.
Okay, the modular.
I know we can lease for a certain amount. Are there used? I mean, I would assume that there would be, because if we're honestly looking at this, to be able to say, we're not going to do, a new city hall for another,
10 years.
yeah, decade at least, then I think we ought to be really looking for something that is going to be a little more permanent than, just, closing things down and all kinds of, accordion walls and whatnot. But so a cubicle, probably the best, or sorry, I keep saying cubicle, I apologize.
Portable.
A portable would be best, but I don't know. I guess if we're going that direction and we're looking at that, we probably ought to look at all of the options that are available, new, lease, you know, a single one-time purchase of an old used one, and then we fix it up or something. I don't know, but
There are used and new options that you can purchase. What I've seen, they run around 75 to 150,000, depending on the finish that you look for. The used, I've seen range from 10,000 to 100,000, and you can imagine what the 10,000 ones look like. They're a little bit weather worn. But yeah, a lot of those, a lot of the newer solutions that you buy new, they're advertising, you know, a 20-year lifespan on the building with proper maintenance, right? So you could get a good modular solution that could last a while if that's something that we wanted to pursue.
well, because I just keep on thinking that if we had it back there and it was only used a certain amount of time, I mean, that makes more sense to me to not have to have the electrical, the air conditioning, which is very expensive during the summer. And that then becomes more of the, okay, we need to use this day or this meeting type of space.
Quinn, how about you weighing in on this?
So I agree with the portable option being about the only one that kind of makes sense. I would like to have them take the effort to just, you know, what is that really going to cost? Is $1,100 a month, or once you add in electricity and heating and air conditioning, is it, you know, $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month? And, you know, how would you reconfigure inside? Because we've budgeted $50,000 for this year to upgrade current city hall. You know, what can you do for that $50,000 this year? Can we get a portable that, you know, you pay monthly and you can still do inside what you're hoping to do with carpet and paint and whatever else? But yeah, I agree. The family activity center doesn't seem feasible. You know, I don't know if the schools would allow us to utilize them, probably not. But I was trying to think, is there some other facility that we could use? And I'm coming up empty there.
In our discussions, like was pointed out, part of the reason we wanted the discussion tonight is, are we looking at a 2-year solution, a 5-year solution, a 10-year solution? When you're saying it's the 10-year solution, because that's what, and we want something that whatever we do is going to be at least for 10 years, then that goes more towards the purchase as opposed to the rental. You know, and so I think you'd be cheaper.
Well, yeah,
I'm not a renter.
that's what I was just writing down. I mean, if this is a long-term solution, then you buy it. Even if it takes another year of budgeting another 50,000, and we use the current budget to get something purchased, which is going to take 6 months to get or longer.
Yeah.
And you can spend that, and we budget another year to do all the interior stuff. I mean, that if it's a long-term solution we're looking at, because, and maybe I'm just speaking from, you know how long it's taken to do public works. I mean, we started this 4 or 5 years ago, even looking for a piece of property and going through that process. And we're still a year to 2 years away from having a building. You're talking 6, 7 years. Well, we haven't even started that process for a city hall or the budget process. And and it's a bonding issue. Do we even have the money to bond for that? Especially if it's a different type of bond.
Can I ask, how many offices are in the latest layout of Public Works for this building outside of Mark's? Any other offices going over
They
there?
reduced it a little
They
bit.
dropped it down to.
We dropped it down
3
and
offices
there's-
and then just kind
Sorry,
of
I
shared
didn't
one.
hear both of you. Which
Sorry.
one?
I don't know the exact count because we did reduce it, but I want to say, because now there's an open space area that has a potential for like 6 to 8 people in there. But there's only 4 or 5 offices.
I think there's only 3 or 4
Maybe,
walled
maybe.
offices. We
Walled
dropped that
offices and
down.
1 training room, like conference room, training room.
When I say public works as an option for future city council meetings, it's not to create additional space over there.
It'd be going to
They're
training room.
creating a kind of a multi-use space that can expand and whatnot. Again, trying to have dual purpose. And so kind of a training room that could expand and have, potentially have that as an option. So it wouldn't be adding on to the budget for the public works facility.
But we would have to
But
for
we'd have to-
parking.
we'd
There's
have
no
to
way.
have
What
a
we whittled down for
sidewalk.
parking is like
So
nothing.
How does that work for court? So that's what comes to my mind is this works better in my mind for court if you're in a portable behind here, behind City Hall.
So actually, you
And
bring up a really,
Maybe I'm wrong.
no, you bring up a
but-
really important point. When court happens here, this building is very dysfunctional, honestly.
Yeah,
There's no queuing space, the meeting space, right now under current restrictions would only allow 7 people in the room. They held court once after the state said, yes, you can go back to meeting in person. And you had to have people waiting in their cars that then had to be told,
Mhm.
okay, now it's your turn because we were limited with the number of people in the room. That's not a permanent situation, but the court situation is actually very, very difficult. And this room functions as a courtroom, but it really doesn't function well as a courtroom. I think you'd have some additional opportunity. If that was where the court was taking place, this could end up being the reception space and checking in. And, we have, 3 staff members there helping all of that happen, and helping facilitate people getting prepared to go stand in front of the judge. And this space could function as that way better than the space over there. When we talk about not having reception space, not having waiting space, the line goes out the door. Again, there are just problems because this wasn't built for office space
Public Works
initially.
wouldn't be any better for that situation.
There will be a little bit of a better reception
Reception
space,
area,
but
there
it
is,
but
but
it wouldn't necessarily be
But
a
they're not
court
even really
solution.
making it a reception area yet.
The only
unless we
way to
change
make it,
that.
the only way to really think of court long-term is to build a new building.
Yeah.
But this is an important point. Right now, the conversation at the state level is to take away a justice court. So in a couple of years, we may not even have to deal with that. So there's a swirling issue with courts at the state level and whether or not we're even going to have to provide that service in the future. So I don't think
So
we make
riddle
the
me this.
decision about court long-term.
Thinking long-term solution or short-term solution. If we did a short-term solution of like 2 to 3 years and waited until Public Works is completed and chose to move council over there or chambers, whatever, over there, would the cost savings of not buying a unit be, how would that compare to doing extra paving and creating the Knights of the Round Table and a circular dais?
We could potentially do gravel lot too, as extra parking if that's, but we'd have to provide for that and we'd still have to pay for the gravel. So
I mean, when you look at it cost per square foot, I mean, it may be 6s and if you're gonna buy this versus paying for that over there, but I still see that as a better solution in my mind. As the portable. I pointed behind us, sorry. This is a vocal meeting, not a visual meeting. So, but I mean,
Portable for council and, or portable for an extra conference room.
I mean,
an office.
I guess we just have to look at the cost of it all. I mean, that's what I mean. I think it's worth looking at the cost of it all, but that's what would determine whether it's a long-term or a short-term solution. And it's an open discussion. My initial knee-jerk reaction was the first I've heard of the chambers moving, so cross it out. It's a little premature, actually, in my opinion, but that's my opinion. So, but you can't have a discussion until we have the numbers.
Mr. Mayor, how much would it cost to put a door in over here?
Well,
It has to be to the penny or I'm not accepting it.
Is it like Price is Right, where
Yeah.
as long as he's under, it's fine,
We
but
have to move,
you
right?
could probably do it depends if you do a storefront door like that,
It would just need to be like,
but if it's just a regular door like we've got coming
Yeah.
in, you could probably do it a couple of thousand, I would think would do it.
So-
1,500, couple of thousand.
And then add 1,000 for your key card.
mhm. To
I replaced
me,
my home my door at home with the front door and it was $2,000 and we didn't take out a wall. So I like your pricing.
That's why it's the mayor.
Well, that's probably with some
Donation.
donation, volunteer.
I'm just wondering if that's a good short-term, long-term solution. If we're talking about putting that in, at least the doors in here so we can mitigate the walking through meeting situation.
I would agree with you. It's a little bit something that we can do.
While we're looking for prices on other things.
And it's not gonna kill us.
This floor has to come out.
Yeah.
before you Put that door.
One thing we've talked about adding, if we were just to add a
Which
door
means this
now,
ledge and everything that we're elevated on comes out.
yeah.
We just put in another little platform like this.
If one thing we've talked about, if we were to add a door now, we could potentially add the door on, but in the break room area, where the fridge is in the kitchen area.
I did hear break room.
That's why he
For the
hurried and tried
record,
to pull
I
that
know,
back.
for the
Yeah,
record.
See that?
You should try to take a break in there.
I had to pump while I was in a tiny room,
Oh,
so this is a sufficient break
And you
room
know,
for
they just
everybody.
come down to
This
my
is
office
fine.
and see how good
It's
it is,
just,
so.
yeah.
I don't even have a break room, so.
I had a
Good.
pump in a bathroom.
Well, okay, I think.
Sounds
let's-
like the council wants us to do
I
some
think
more due
let's-
diligence
yeah,
and bring
let's
back
do
some, but you're willing to, you want us and you're willing to look at those
I
options and
think
kind
we
of
can
vet them a
look at
little
those.
bit and put some time into trying to come up with more of a
Yeah, I think we can
longer-term
say
solution.
FAC is out,
Yeah.
but maybe
Well, especially before
modular.
you go spend, come July 1, and we have $100,000 budgeted to remodel. But we better do what we want long-term, because you're still 7 to 8 years before you're gonna have a new
Mhm.
building, at the very earliest.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and that's, honestly, this is a conversation we want to have from a lessons learned perspective, right? We had a fire auxiliary building that started out with a concept, and then as you vetted it, it turned into more than what it was. So we want to have a full-on plan of what we're going to do here. And so it's important that we.
Maybe we should just
talk to
move
it.
all the
I don't know
trucks
if
out
that
of the
was before
auxiliary
we
building.
vetted it became something more. It was always a shed to me.
All I know is when the pit,
I didn't mean to bring a sore subject up, just the idea that we want to have a fully fleshed out plan of what we're going to do
Agreed.
so that we know
Okay.
exactly how much money it's going to cost.
all I know is when the pits turn into a lake, it'd be really nice to have floating offices. I'm not gonna bring it up again, just so.
Okay,
you
if
for your
you'll look
time.
into that, bring back some information. Okay, new business. Anyone have some new business they need to discuss?
I do, Mayor. I just would like to make sure that, I've had several residents reach out to me about, frustrations with Canyon Meadows Park East, if I can say that. We have a Canyon Meadows Park West, but, specifically about the train club and the maintenance or lack thereof. And so as a former member of the Parks Committee, I really want us to address that train club contract. Because it's at the point now that the residents are saying, this is ridiculous. I am having to maintain this. Or some of them are saying, forget it, no one's maintaining it, so I'm not either. And it's kind of becoming an issue. So I would really love to see that come forward on a.
And
agenda.
just so you do know, we've got a meeting set up, and Dave and I were talking about it also today, about some different options that we could do and some different things that need to happen with it. But we do have a meeting next week on it. And
With
then
the train club?
With
Well,
with the
without-
Or the committee?
committee first, so that we can discuss it. And then with the train club to, present the different options that we come up with in that
Thank
meeting.
you.
So yeah, it is being taken care of.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay. Any other new business? Quinn, you got anything?
Nothing new, no.
Okay, any reports from the council?
Just have an update on code committee. We met and discussed, there's a few things underway. So we have our noise ordinance, which will be coming back, I'm assuming next meeting, Mayor, is that correct? For city council? It got bumped from our last
I
meeting.
think it's on there.
Say that again.
Noise ordinance will be coming
Yes.
On for next month.
next
Yes.
month. We had emergency culinary water restrictions that we've been discussing. This is basically pre-planning for the possibility that next year we are in dire need of culinary water. We're just trying to get something underway, so if that were to happen, we would be prepared for it. So we discussed extending emergency powers to the mayor to put us in a state of emergency, which would allow the council to do by a resolution increase water rates to try and help curb water usage or other things to that nature. So that's coming underway. The staff will be working on that. Also going to sit down and talk about the R7 code and the things that got brought up with the Gateway project that we need to do to utilize that to become townhome parcels. And then also just discussing roles and responsibilities, processes, who does what, when they do them, and everything, just kind of putting that very clearly out in the code. So there's a lot of questions and just some vagueness that we're going to be working on in the coming months. So that is what we are working on.
Just one quick note. I don't know what all of your experience has been, but I have received quite a bit of feedback on our last meeting and the 3% annual automatic increase to the storm drain. And yeah, there's a lot of frustration in the public out there about making it an automatic every year 3% instead of having it as something that is renewed. But it is renewed as we go through the fees. So, but yeah, there's a lot of concern and a lot of attention to that. So I just wanted to pass that on.
Can I ask a quick question about that, Mac? Yeah. You can give me just a very simple yes or no. Let's say we had, like, I think I asked this, but I just really want to make sure I understand really well. If we had a really good sales tax year next year, found ourselves with a surplus, could we take 100,000 from the general fund and put it in the storm drain fund?
No.
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 Thank you.
Have anything?
I do not.
I do not.
Quinn?
Mayor, yeah, I just got one thing. I am on the Interstate 84, US 89 interchange CCT, it's Citizens Committee that gives input. I don't know if any of you have gone out and looked at some of the past proposals they had. Basically, they've cleared those off the table and are starting fresh. So they're asking public input on concerns, suggestions, ideas. They're starting the environmental study for that interchange. So it's, a couple of years out before they're going to get into the actual formal design. But I'm involved in those meetings. So if you have ideas or suggestions or concerns, we can bring those up. I brought up a few that we've had, just that whenever they do the construction, they need to be aware of the wind issues. And so they're not plastering our city.
They got rid of the, did they get rid of the spewy idea?
They've taken them off the table. They're still ideas, but those are only proposals. And so now they're opening it up for any other creative ideas or solutions that people want to put forth.
Okay, thank you.
To add to what Quinn said, the project manager there and their communication team has reached out to us, and we did have a meeting scheduled today that got moved back to next week. And so they have reached out to have specific communication with the city as well, not just the CCT. So kind of the community group that Quinn is a part of before he was on the council that has continued, and now specifically meeting with the city on that. And so we'll meet them next week and get kind of a direct update from them as well.
Okay. Staff, do you have any?
Yes, I've got two items. I want to give huge kudos to our finance department, specifically MAC. This is the Government Finance Officers Association award for budget presentation. And so the document that you see that has the pictures and the images is great, but more than that, the financial information and all that data and whatnot. This is a very distinguished award that MAC put a lot of time and energy into. I know other staff members did, but he's the one who really spearheaded this and took the lead on that. So huge kudos to Mac. This is for budget presentation. If you remember that when we did our RFP for our auditing firm, we also requested auditing help in having a reporting award. There is a annual financial reporting document you can create that also can be awarded. And so the next goal not only is to get this year after year by continuing to report the way that we do, but also adding or budgeting the way we do, adding the reporting side of that as well. So we will now pursue that reporting award at the same time. So this is really big and heavy.
Way to go,
Way
Matt.
to go, Matt.
Good job, Matt.
Also kind of a kudos, I think the council already knows this, but I want the public to know that, and Jamie already kind of alluded to it earlier, but the cobblestone appeal decision finally came down and we were victorious in every regard. Every argument, every statement, the judge landed on the city side. And so we have precedent now. We have an actual judge decision that tells us that our enforcement of our business licensing code, our short-term rental code, and our definition of single family is all very justifiable. And now we have a actual judge decision that we can refer to. And this, I think, will have ripple effects to other cities and just really a landmark decision that, kudos to the city council, the mayor for the decisions made not only now, but also previous members of the city council and mayor that put a lot into that. Those decisions that you made years ago are making a difference. And that was a really big evidence to that. So from the city staff, thank you to the mayor and city council, because that's a big deal. As I read through the decision, it had a background section. And the first thing it talked about was when that property was purchased. And it was 4 years ago. This started in 2018 as one of the very first things that crossed my desk when I started here in May of 2018. And so we've now gone multiple steps, multiple years, and we came out better than we ever could have hoped for, honestly. Jamie talked about it in glowing terms that if he would have written the opinion letter himself, it wouldn't have had everything that they put in there. It really was great for us and great for cities in general. So that's a huge deal and a really big thing. So again, thank you to the mayor and council for all you did to put us in that position.
Thank you to staff.
Yeah, thanks.
Yay, I'm happy for that.
Anything else, Dave? Mark? Trevor? One item I might discuss for just a minute, on the city sign up by the Maverick, doing a little more research on that, got with a Young Electric sign. They came back with a proposal that if we take off the 2 stone columns, shift that sign all the way over to the south, which would gain us just about 4 feet. They gave us a price of about $5,000 approximately to do that.
Make it so.
Is that satisfactory with everybody?
Yeah, what's it gonna look like?
What we thought we would do before anything else is send it to UDOT and make sure that if we do that, we'll see a no turn on red come down.
Can we make sure we get that in writing too?
We will, before we do it. But, so that's kind of where we're at. Do we want to continue to pursue that, or what do you guys think?
I stand
Mayor,
by.
if-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Clay.
I was just gonna ask if they move it, so the base will still be there, so we'll have the bottom.
They did it. I was going to bring it and I left it on my office desk. I'm sorry. He had a rendering of what it looked like, and my first impression was, well, that doesn't look so bad after all. And what they proposed to do, or what they said was, I thought where you've got the 2-foot base, which is above ground level, that goes, from outside of column to outside of column. And so I thought of removing the columns and leaving the base, and then you'd have a lopsided base. But in their rendering, they showed it cutting off the base as well and removing that whole 4-foot section, and then that centered everything up. So now you've got basically the base that's 2 feet or so off the ground, and then the sign just fits directly above that with the South Weaver portion of above it. It didn't look that bad.
Well, I stand by that. We need to do what we need to do to get that no turn on red down because it will be problematic. So I support this.
I think we should pursue it. And I
Me
like
too.
to know turn on red.
We'll pursue it then.
Thank you, Mayor.
Just for Michael.
Okay, no other items, then we'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 8:40.
No.